Chapter 258. NT, Regular Chapter. I am going to increase the pace of releases. Demon Island arc is nearing its end. Chapter 258 rushes all the way. 3 men and a wolf rushed all the way at an extremely fast speed and soon reached the huge ominous mountain. Although this mountain was visible from any part of the Demon Island, it was in fact located very far away in the depths of the island. Now, after arrived so close to the mountain, all they saw was a steady stream of demon beasts rushing to the mountain one after another. Even the Yellow River changed its course and was flowing towards the ominous mountain. The ghost soldiers were riding the mighty streams of Yellow River and all set to go on an expedition to the ominous mountain. This was really a frightening event. Innumerable tribal groups that consisted of various species of demon beasts, which usually preferred to stay in hiding, also showed up to be a part of this grand expedition. Not to mention, the mighty cavalry of ghost soldiers was also a part of this grand expedition, making the whole situation quite scary for human experts. Yi Shiwen was literally speechless when he looked at the raid being performed by demon beasts and ghost soldiers. Such an enormous and mighty army was enough to bring chaos throughout Jinwujie. The sheer number of legendary realm warriors in this army was beyond imagination. Not to mention, this was just their strength after the decline of their influence over a span of thousands of years. Yi Shiwen simply could not imagine the extent of their original might when this influence was at its peak. The fearful shrieks of the undead creatures could be heard from far. Yi Shiwen condensed Jinyuan in his eyes, and it seemed as if he suddenly opened a dave eye in the sky. Now, he could see from unimaginable far distances. From afar, he saw an endless army of skeleton monsters that were entirely enveloped in inexhaustible amounts of dead ki. There could be only one way to define these skeletons: terrifying creatures. It was easy to make a guess that they belonged to a mighty ancient influence, and at this time, an army of skeletons was rushing down the mountain. The terror-inducing sound of bones, rubbing against each other, was resounding throughout the sky and making the whole atmosphere even more frightening. Yi Shiwen witnessed how the army of skeletons severely clashed with the army of demon beasts, and vicious creatures on both sides began the most terror-inspiring battle. In moments, there were several casualties on both sides, but that didn't affect the battle at all. Beep! At this time, the golden-winged eagle arrived like a fighter jet, flapping its wings violently, and shot several rounds of lasing beams on the skeleton army, sweeping clean a big stretch of area. However, the golden-winged eagle did not stop and continued to advance in the direction of the mountain of undead. On the rear side of skeleton army, there was an immense army of skeletons and zombies. And several zombie experts had unimaginable strength and cultivation levels. The zombie commander suddenly released his invincible imposing aura, thereby sweeping dead ki into the sky in the form of a column of light. As soon as this column of ominous light soared into the sky, it exploded and scattered the dark clouds in all directions. Yi Shiwen's eyes opened wide as he saw this scene. He suddenly held his breath and simply couldn't believe his eyes. If skeletons were terrifying, then zombie experts were much more dreadful. And then there were also evil spirits waiting to wreak havoc on this world. Wu Shaochuan cursed out loud and said, "God damn it! I just hope that the Matrix method is still confining a major part of this undead army, otherwise we are screwed." The roars of demon beasts, the roars of undead creatures, the rubbing sounds of bones, when interwoven together, the generated noise was extremely horrifying, enough to shake heaven and earth. The count of demon beasts kept on increasing since more and more demon beasts kept on joining the battle to stop the rampage of the undead army. The two sides were in a deadly deadlock, which was essential to stop the undead army from destroying the entire island. It was like Armageddon, the whole island was trembling. It seemed as if the whole world would collapse as a result of this battle. Soon, the Yellow River also reached its destination, and ghost soldiers joined the battle. The ghost cavalry reached directly from the oblique side and cut off the contact between skeletons and zombies. Although skeletons and zombies might have been extraordinary powerhouses when they were alive, but when confronted with the Yellow River, they immediately fell under the possession of evil spirits lurking in the yellow water, and this greatly lowered their spiritual strength. Some could no longer maintain their existence, screamed loudly and melted on the spot. It was a terrible war, enough to inspire terror in anyone. The dark sky was wreaking havoc on the island in the form of deadly rain that was capable of instantly corroding things. "Let's go, no matter what, we must cross the battlefield." Yi Shiwen took a deep breath and said. There was only one option at hand for not only their own survival but also for the safety of the entire world. Anyway, Tomb's slave told earlier that they could not leave this island, and if this undead army was allowed to go outside, then there was no point in leaving either, because the entire Jinwujia would face destruction. The entire humanity might face annihilation, so they must find a way out of this mess. Hoo-hoo! Yi Zaiwen's extremely fast flight as he cut through the air produced a whistling sound that seemed to resemble a devil's cry. Yi Shiwen and the others rushed all the way and soon reached the intersection point between the two armies. The demon beast soldiers seemed to understand that Yi Shiwen and the others were here to help them. Not to mention, they were indulged in this battle and simply did not have time to attend to Yi Zaiwen's team. However, skeletons noticed them, and immediately, a formidable skeleton gave the order to his subordinates to attack. They immediately reacted by shooting a barrage of bone arrows towards Yi Shiwen and his team. Also, there was no lack of legendary realm skeletons among the attackers. "Get out of the way!" Yi Shiwen bellowed, and his whole body was instantly covered by a golden cloak of divinities. The mighty divinities were burning wantonly around his body while also purifying the dead ki in his surroundings. This decreased the intensity of howling of innumerable souls that were filled with resentment. The long blade danced in his hands and released a dazzling blade light that instantly formed a curtain of blade shadows and blocked the incoming bone arrows, chopping and crushing several of them to bits almost instantly. Mu Ling and Wu Shaochuan also resorted to their secret techniques to block the incoming barrage of bone arrows. Then there came a shrill cry and a formidable-looking skeleton took out a bone arrow, aimed at Yi Shiwen and shot. The arrow pierced through the space and almost instantly arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. Almost at that moment, a terrible light flashed in the sky and the bone arrow instantly disintegrated under its enormous might. Then the golden light further proceeded and crashed into that skeleton, crushing him instantly. Yi Shiwen looked up and saw the giant stature of golden-winged eagle in the distance. It did not stop and once again continued to slaughter undead soldiers. Apparently, it did this to protect Yi Shiwen and his friends. The trio and the wolf cub continued to move forward, but more cautiously. This time, they were fortunate enough to receive help from the golden-winged eagle, otherwise, things could have become messy. They went forward all the way, only to find many experts in the distance. They had also taken advantage of the commotion and arrived here to participate in this battle. It seemed like they had also been persuaded by the tomb's slave. In short, they knew that if they did not go all out now, then there was a possibility of a great disaster that would eventually bring death to all. Therefore, they chose to struggle for survival rather than waiting for death. Yi Shiwen's team also joined the team of experts. This team was being led by Emperor Qin, only this time, he was sitting upon a golden lion. He appeared majestic, just like the true emperor of this world. Emperor Qin's imposing aura swept over in all directions. He turned his head and saw Yi Shiwen flying towards his team. He snorted but did not take the opportunity to attack Yi Shiwen, because he was clearly aware of the severity of the situation. He ignored the presence of Yi Shiwen and urged the golden lion, thereby flying all the way forward. Qing Su could also be seen following Emperor Qin, and his aura was no worse than Emperor Qin's. With just a flick of his hand, a blue beam appeared out of nowhere and swept skeletons out of his path. Qing Su was riding a beautiful yellow crane and appeared just like an immortal being. There were several familiar faces on this team, such as Ji Moon could be seen standing on her butterfly lizard, Warhawk was also riding his golden-winged eagle, and Wang Purple was also present. These four formidable experts were guarding the four sides of the team formation with all other human experts inside the formation. Mu Yuran and Jian Wuchen were no longer injured and had come to participate as well. In addition, several other strong experts of the 10 countries of the southeast region had also arrived, with some being at truth 7th or 8th stage while some being only at truth 4th or 5th stage. The island's best human experts had already arrived to participate in this battle for their survival. But at this time, the smell of blood spread all over, the sky turned red and began to pour blood everywhere, almost as if the heaven was crying tears of blood. "It's the infamous blood rain, so terrible!" an expert said when he was drenched in the blood rain and felt his body getting heavy, to the extent that he was unable to take even a single step forward. "Tianyuan mirror!" Yi Shiwen shouted, and Tianyuan mirror flew out into the sky and released a curtain of scarlet light that immediately acted as a shelter against the blood rain. However, when the blood rain fell on the scarlet shelter, it instead became a source of nourishment for the mirror. "Ha ha ha!" Yemo gave out a carefree laughter because this blood rain was simply like a nourishing shower for him and Tianyuan mirror. This shower of blood was made up of evaporated blood and essence of demon beast soldiers as they were being slaughtered by undead soldiers. For most people, this blood rain was like a curse and very hard to deal with. In fact, it could even kill formidable experts if proper protection was not used, but Tianyuan mirror directly erased the curse and absorbed blood and essence out of it. This was the reason why Tianyuan mirror was getting brighter, as it was constantly absorbing blood and essence of killed demon beasts. The scarlet light released by the mirror almost camouflaged the surrounding sky. At this time, Tianyuan mirror flew high into the sky, got bigger and bigger, covering a very wide area, and the blood rain was directly absorbed by the scarlet red mirror. The experts cupped their hands and showed gratitude to Yi Shiwen. If Yi Shiwen had not acted at the critical moment, then they would have faced extreme difficulties in dealing with this blood rain. They felt like throwing up due to the repugnant smell of blood emanating from the blood rain. This was the time when everyone needed unity and cooperation. Yi Shiwen was not stingy and openly lent them a hand, not to mention, it also allowed Tianyuan mirror to reap great benefits. In any event, Yi Shiwen made the right decision. Only Emperor Chen looked coldly at Yi Shiwen. He neither appreciated Yi Zaiwen's strength nor the kindness rendered by him. He certainly was not afraid of this blood rain and continued to defend the front line. To be continued. Chapter 259. Chapter 259 Struggle on the Ominous Mountain. Only Emperor Chen looked coldly at Yi Shiwen. He neither appreciated Yi Zaiwen's strength nor the kindness rendered by him. He certainly was not afraid of this blood rain and rushed toward the front line on his golden lion. Under the crazy shower of blood, the team of experts was enjoying full protection of Yi Zaiwen's Tianyuan mirror. After successfully bypassing the skeleton army, they bumped into the mighty army of zombies. These horrifying zombies were continuously gushing out from the gap in the Matrix method. Yi Shiwen and the others did not stop there and flew all the way, only to find a flaming bird in the distance that was constantly sweeping clean an area with its immortal flames which could burn the world itself. The team of experts rushed through the flaming area and reached so close to the ominous mountain for the first time. They saw a mighty team of undead, mainly consisting of high-ranked zombies, rushing down from the mountain. The most unusual scenery that greeted human experts was when they looked into the Matrix method and actually saw a variety of palace buildings on the mountain peak. Yes, an entire complex of ancient architecture with lots of crowded buildings covering the entire mountain area inside the Matrix formation. This should be the headquarters of the ancient mighty influence that initially ruled this island. Almost all of them are made up of rare materials, Yemo said. And considering how old a being he was, the amount of experience he possessed was not something Yi Shiwen could comprehend. Only after searching in several dimensions, one can find so many rare building materials. Most of these materials do not occur in this world. I must say that these buildings are more extravagant than Devil King's palace. Everyone was shocked after witnessing this endless complex of ancient architectural masterpiece. Built with an amazing combination of gold and jade and some strange materials, never seen before. However, right now, these buildings were acting as a breeding nest for a variety of zombies and evil spirits that were continuously coming out of the palace buildings. There was no end to this undead army, and after watching this scene, human experts felt chills down their spines. In Yi Zaiwen's mind, abruptly, the ancient seal characters cropped up. The same seal characters he had seen earlier in the ruins of an ancient civilization. That time, he was sucked into a scary illusion. He couldn't help but remember the same illusion once again. Boom! Boom! Numerous electric snakes could be seen creeping in the black clouds, and a terrifying thunder struck the palace. The palace couldn't withstand the enormous destructive power contained in the thunder strike and crumbled down. "I am here, now come out!" Suddenly, a majestic voice resounded in all directions. "Buzz!" The low and dull muffled sound of a bell resounded and instantly sent out numerous sonic waves everywhere, while several electric snakes could be seen lurking in the dark cloud, and seemed all prepared to bring down chaos in this world. "Get lost!" Accompanied by a loud shout, a few 100 feet wide pillar of golden light went straight into the sky and dispersed the dark thundering clouds. As the voice fell, a middle-aged man flew out of the wreckage of palace and coldly looked towards the sky. He had a dignified bearing and was clad in a golden-colored emperor's robe. In the sky, the scattered clouds suddenly agglutinated again and revealed a huge glowing eye in the center. "If you dare to go against the heaven's will, you cannot do that without a fight," a muffled voice echoed everywhere. And a huge lightning maliciously struck. Wasn't the illusion based on this location? Though it looked somewhat different after having undergone corrosion for thousands of years, Yi Shiwen still managed to recognize this place in one glance. Or the entire island was perhaps the background in this scene and not just this part of the ominous mountain of the undead. Right after entering the Matrix method, human experts immediately felt a terrible pressure upon their bodies. They felt as if they would be crushed under this pressure. The strange force suddenly fell down from the sky and pushed them to the ground. Now they had no means to fly inside the Matrix formation. Certainly, there were some exceptions like Yi Shiwen with his golden devil wings, Warhawk riding his pet golden-winged eagle, Ji Moon riding her butterfly lizard, and Qing Su riding his yellow crane. After all, even if human experts were unable to use various techniques to fly, the ones with wings would naturally be able to fly in the air. The terrifying shrieks were resounding everywhere, and the whole scene was truly fear-inspiring. Watching the steady stream of zombies coming out of the palace buildings, everyone felt as if they had stepped in a zombie nest. Otherwise, how could there be hundreds of thousands of zombies in one place? I think this place is an ancient battlefield. All these zombies are clad in iron armors, armed with spears. It is clear that they used to be war soldiers who have now transformed into zombies. You are right, it's too terrifying. I also thought the same thing, and this place seems like the lair of a formidable ancient civilization. And it seems like they were attacked by some even more formidable force that led to countless casualties, which eventually led to the birth of these zombies. What kind of formidable force can destroy such a fearful influence, causing so many casualties? This is unbelievably shocking. Anyway, we have to uncover the seal, otherwise, we certainly will not have any way out of this mess. An expert said in a loud voice and was heard by all other experts. This worked as a spark to help them recover from their shock states. They also began to think about the most vital point. If they did not do their best, then there was only a dead end waiting for them. At this time, the Matrix method began to revolve, and even though some formidable zombies and skeletons were constantly attacking the gap, desperately trying to widen it and ultimately destroy the entire Matrix method, but the Matrix method, despite having a gap, was intrepid and sparkling across the sky. In the sky, the stars were twinkling like never before and as if announcing the incoming of an apocalypse. And suddenly, a huge beam of light detached itself from the Matrix formation and severely pounded on the ground, smashing many zombies and skeletons into minced meat. Joe's Star Matrix Method. The wolf cub opened its mouth wide and spelled out the name of this Matrix method. The energy of the stars was condensed by the Matrix formation, transforming into a huge dragon tail, and severely hit the ground. Taking advantage of this situation, the team of human experts rushed forward. Even if they could not fly, they were still advancing at extremely high speeds. The huge palace-like buildings were connected with each other, and were positioned as sections of ladders, one after another while going up towards the mountain peak. The experts crossed the buildings one after another and continued to climb up while also encountering many zombies and skeletons on the way. They did not stop to engage the undead soldiers and continued to advance forward at maximum speed. They could not afford to waste any time, and needed to stop the advancement of the undead army into the Demon Island. The experts were getting agitated but did not dare to stay to fight with undead soldiers because staying behind was no different than dying a brutal death. "Hey! Hey!" Several pitiful screams echoed when experts were passing through a palace and were suddenly attacked by two pairs of jaw bones as they directly dashed into the crowd of human experts and caught several experts at once. There came miserable cries along with spooky bone-rubbing sounds as if the flesh was being chewed directly from the bodies of people who were still alive and screaming. All of the experts who managed to evade this attack looked at each other with eyes filled with horror. After all, this was not something they witnessed every day. Now everyone knew how important it was to reach the summit as soon as possible and open the seal, then only they could stop this nightmare. But this was something that has never been accomplished by anyone in the past thousands of years. No one had ever succeeded in taking off the seal, but they had no choice but to do it. They could only choose to go forward while temporarily ignoring the loss of their comrades. Of course, retreat was not an option. "We must hurry, but we must be careful not to go near those palaces." At this time, Ching Su, who was riding a yellow crane, shouted from the sky and warned everyone. "Yes, charge forward in order to survive!" All experts were encouraged by this and rushed forward. Those palaces were extremely frightening and were being guarded by frightening monsters. They encountered much more terrifying monsters as they continued to get closer to the summit. By the time they reached halfway up towards their destination, almost half of their team had been sacrificed, leaving less than 500 experts. This was no ordinary loss, and especially for the southeast region that lost so many of its super elites. Most of the weaker human experts were eaten by the zombies, but the rest of the team did not stop to help them. This was certainly a heartless thing to do, but they had to endure it because if they had stopped to help others, then everyone would have died. There were several palace monsters who almost came close to single-handedly wipe out the entire team of experts. A rotting monster suddenly came out of a palace and chased after them, but the saving grace came as a fact that it was somehow bound to the palace and couldn't go past a certain limit. However, it still managed to drag away several experts and ate them. These experts had never experienced such a terrible place in their entire life. They were the so-called lucky and pampered geniuses of the southeast region who never had to face life-threatening situations to grow stronger, so this situation was pretty much of a disaster for them. Gradually, as they continued to climb up, the number of zombies reduced considerably, but their strength grew enough to compensate. They also bumped into a half-step legendary level zombie that was immediately engaged by Ching Su and Emperor Chen. But their combined strength was not enough to deal with it. The gap between Truth 9th stage and half-step legendary realm was too large. But fortunately, that zombie had spent more than a millennium and seemed to possess limited strength. Hence, after a while, it was overpowered by the team of human experts. Afterward, they slowly approached the summit. They had started to feel tired, but the great responsibility upon their shoulders was what boosting their morale and pushing them to try harder and achieve their goal. To be continued. Chapter 260. Chapter 260. If I cannot do it, you all will die. Only Emperor Chen, Ching Su, and Yi Shiwen were able to keep a straight face in such a dire situation. Other experts, including Warhawk, looked extremely exhausted. Some experts had their bodies completely soaked in sweat and were on the verge of collapse. Some were showing signs of breathing trouble while sustaining terrible suppression inside the Zhou Star Matrix formation. "Come on, everyone, we are quickly nearing the pinnacle!" Ching Su shouted. But at this time, the team of experts saw two zombies of half-step legendary realm pacing towards them from far behind. The crowd called out in alarm. They were scared and definitely not prepared to withstand such a toss. After all, one such zombie of half-step legendary realm had exhausted them to such a pitiful state. Then how could they even considering dealing with two of them simultaneously? "What should we do now? There are two of them, coming after us. I don't want to die after getting so close to our destination." Their goal was so close, but the boost in their morale did not survive long after the sudden appearance of two zombies of half-step legendary realm. Originally, they never thought much about Half-Step Legendary Realm, as their target was always the Legendary Realm. Half-Step Legendary Realm was just a milestone in between, and being peerless geniuses, they never had a doubt about not reaching this realm. It was only a matter of time for them. However, after dealing with that last zombie, they came to realize that they were high mistaken to have underestimated the Half-Step Legendary Realm. After all, even if Emperor Qin and Qing Su were at the peak of Truth Ninth Realm, together they could not defeat one zombie of Half-Step Legendary Realm. But fortunately, these two zombies should have been weakened too like the previous one, otherwise, despair would be the only thing awaiting them. Let me deal with this. At this time, Yishiwen stepped forward and said. Everyone was astonished and looked at Yishiwen, as it took more than just courage to dare and make such a statement. Yishiwen, have you gone out of your mind? Wu Shaochuan quickly said. Let me explain. These two zombies were obviously partners when they were alive. It is easy to infer that from their actions. So, if they join forces and attack together, then we are doomed. It will be impossible to block their joint raids, so the best way is to divert one of them. Yishiwen said, and everyone nodded. His talent was not unknown to everyone, and regardless of his strength and level, he was still an elite peerless genius who just now made a valid point. However, everyone knew that distracting a zombie of Half-Step Legendary Realm would not be an easy task for one guy. This was a suicidal plan and would lead to certain death, but nobody wanted to die, making things more complicated and confusing. But Yishiwen willingly accepted to take up this risky position, which was quite shocking for everyone. If the strength is too weak for the job, then even if one of us managed to distract a zombie, it will be pointless, as that person will be killed in an instant. And then the zombie will turn back to reunite with its partner, Yishiwen said. Therefore only a few people are fit for this task. Everyone nodded, though there were a lot of people who were not willing to take such a risk. But at this time, all had to admit that it was indeed not possible for most people to successfully perform this task, honestly, because they lacked required qualifications to do so. These people knew that even the strongest and most talented Emperor Qin was not daring to take up the task, since even he would admit that he did not have such capability to single-handedly stop a zombie. But why did Yishiwen came up with this idea, and why was he willing to take such a risk? Everyone was confused, especially Mu Ling and Wu Shaochuan, as they were anxiously looking at Yishiwen and trying to understand what was going on in his mind. Why was he looking for death? However, I am the most appropriate one for the job, Yishiwen said. A zombie's most vital advantage is not martial arts, but its body, which is much more formidable than demon beasts of the same level. Right now, your martial strength is limited due to suppression, but I am not affected because my body is strong enough to constrain a zombie. Yishiwen certainly hadn't made this decision in a heat of the moment. It was a well-thought-out plan, and he needed to be careful to make it work. They did not have the option to make a U-turn and get out of there. Yishiwen made this decision, keeping survival a top priority, since he was willing to face the situation at hand without succumbing to escapism. Moreover, right now, the formidable powers of these zombies were limited according to what the tomb slave said. Not to forget that they were still more powerful than experts of Truth Ninth Stage. It was said that when Gilded Tyrant form would be practiced to the perfection level, then the practitioners should be able to tear apart mythical beings like gods and devils with bare hands. Although Yi Zaiwen's practice had not yet reached such a high level, however, a zombie of Half-Step Legendary Realm was also not a mythical being. Only Yishiwen with his Gilded Tyrant body could contend with a zombie, while others simply did not stand a chance when fighting alone. Yishiwen knew that this was going to be a tough battle with unpredictable outcomes, and there was a chance that he might get killed, but he had no choice, because if these two zombies attacked together, then everyone was bound to die, including him. Only I can do this. And remember one thing. If I don't succeed, then you all will die for sure. Yi Zaiwen's expression was blunt, but his words showed his boldness and confidence, to the extent that even his rivals suddenly began to feel that he was quite pleasing to the eyes. Wu Shaochuan and Mu Ling tried again and again to persuade Yishiwen, but he had already made up his mind. Moreover, even these two understood that this was not only the best choice available to them but also the most reliable choice. If Yi Shiwen stayed with rest of the team and the other zombies attacked, then the entire team would face instant annihilation. Yi Shiwen rushed forward, and at the same time, his whole body was enveloped in a golden cloak. From afar he appeared just like a golden god of war, a powerful being with extraordinary powers. He seemed out of place in this dark environment, as if a golden god woke up just now from the chaos in order to eradicate the chaos with his own hands. Yi Shiwen opened his devil wings and instantly flew towards the zombies while simultaneously thrusting his palm to shoot Dragon Chi towards a zombie. Boom! The Dragon Chi severely crashed into that zombie's body and it started roaring again and again due to intense pain caused by this attack. At this time, the other zombie suddenly jumped towards Yi Shiwen and started chasing him. Yi Shiwen had succeeded in his plan. Now, he turned around and flew all the way towards the mountain forest to lure the pursuing zombie into that forest. After luring it far into the forest, Yi Shiwen stopped and retracted his wings. When the zombie saw him stopping, it suddenly got excited and went towards Yi Shiwen. Its skinny claws stretched out to grasp him. The zombie was using tiger claw style to grasp Yi Shiwen to death. Yi Shiwen knew this and certainly would not let this happen. Since his whole body was already enveloped in a golden cloak, it was safe to say that Gilded Tyrant form was acting at its best. He shouted and thrust both his palms towards the incoming claws. His palms transformed into dragon claws, displaying the incomparable might of Coiling Dragon Palm. One must know that Coiling Dragon Palm was an ancient martial technique, and it was very difficult for an ordinary expert to comprehend it. Some disciples had tried in the past but had lost their mind and soul as a result. Not to mention, Yi Shiwen also had to face a similar problem, and its mastery was fairly difficult for him, unless he would comprehend it to an extraordinary extent. However, Yi Shiwen actually managed to reach such an extent, but not by learning from others. He relied on his own insight that he obtained inside the mysterious space to comprehend Coiling Dragon Palm in his own way. He could still see the figure of an indomitable spirit of a man that was constantly practicing Coiling Dragon Palm in his mind. Yi Shiwen had spent a lot of time in the mysterious space to get insights about how to practice and implement it, but rather than copying that figure, he comprehended this technique in his own way to get better results, excluding the move sets he did not need and adding the ones he might need to improve the technique. Yi Shiwen applied this kind of learning, comprehending and improving method on all techniques. So, he was always able to improve a technique to increase its power and decrease the difficulty of using it in an actual combat. Boom! The bone claws and coiling dragon claws severely collided with each other. It seemed as if the resulting explosion was caused by atomic collisions in general. This was a terrible collision, and the shock waves caused as a result swept across in all directions and wiped out a major section of the forest. Yi Shiwen had to retreat several steps, and he felt his chest tightening as a result. Even though he was protected by his Gilded Tyrant body, he still felt as if his body would fall apart. This zombie's body was really intrepid, unlike its skinny appearance. Other experts would have been torn apart by its claws, so the only saving grace, this time, was his Golden Tyrant body. Otherwise, even an expert of Truth 9th stage would not stand a chance. Yi Shiwen was able to contend because the fighting styles of both him and the zombie relied on their respective formidable bodies. To be continued. Chapter 261. Chapter 261 Deathmatch with a half-step legendary zombie. This fight was certainly not going to be an easy one for Yi Shiwen. Even though the zombie was under suppression, it was still more powerful and had a much stronger body than him in comparison. So, in the end, Yi Shiwen did not hold a single advantage against it. But this did not mean that Yi Ziwen's Gilded Tyrant form was utterly useless. He could take on the zombie by relying on the tyrannical defense of his golden body, but his inferior cultivation level was not at all a help. His battle strength was comparable to Truth 9th stage, and the gap between 9th stage and half-step legendary realm was too difficult to surmount. Zombies were infamous for their terrifying bodies in all of the 10,000 worlds. And the body of a zombie of half-step legendary level was easily going to have an iron threshold. Yes, there were thresholds above the iron threshold such as copper threshold, silver threshold, golden threshold, etc. It was said that a zombie with golden threshold could actually contend with mythical creatures. Although this zombie had not yet fully entered the iron threshold phase, its body was still formidable when taken in Yi Zaiwen's perspective. Because Yi Shiwen still hadn't fully reached the true potential of Gilded Tyrant form due to his lack of level, as he was still in Truth Realm, and he would require the understanding of Legendary Realm to perfect it. Fortunately, that zombie's power was suppressed, or else Yi Shiwen wouldn't stand a chance. Even so, Yi Shiwen would have to participate in a deadly battle for survival. Yi Shiwen and the zombie fiercely clashed, and so did their tyrannical bodies, sweeping away anything in the past in the form of a horrifying explosion in the forest. Yi Zaiwen's golden body couldn't block the entirety of attack force, and traces of blood appeared from the corners of his mouth. Yi Shiwen was dedicated to his cause and was willing to face much worse for its sake. He had no alternative, and if he did not do his best then everyone would be slaughtered, including his friends. Moreover, if everyone died then who would complete the task? Therefore, Yi Shiwen had to bite the bullet and once again move forward to engage in battle. Yi Shiwen seemed prepared to do his best and go all out. Shua! 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 He immediately took out Poisonous Dragon Water Control Flag Array and summoned Deepwater Black Snake King with the combined soul power of 19 Deepwater Black Snakes. The humongous beast instantly surrounded the zombie and kept on roaring, seemingly all prepared to attack at any time. However, the zombie immediately used its fists and kicks and gave several blows to the Deepwater Black Snake King. The Deepwater Black Serpent King's overall power had reached merely the 9th layer of Truth Realm and was only one step away from becoming a water dragon, but it was still knocked out like a stray dog. Yi Shiwen had predicted this outcome and was only using the power of the flag array to encircle the zombie and keep it distracted. Anyway, Deepwater Black Snake King was just a collection of energy, so Yi Shiwen was not afraid of its safety. Moreover, Deepwater Black Snake King used to be at half-step Legendary Realm when he was alive and would soon transform into a water dragon, becoming a valuable addition to his arsenal. Although after death, its power had greatly reduced, but the zombie's true power was also under suppression. If not alone, perhaps together they could thwart this zombie. The Deepwater Black Snake King restructured its disintegrated body and once again attacked the zombie. Yi Shiwen took this opportunity to use Phoenix Regeneration to restore his injuries. In a matter of few breaths, his condition was restored to peak condition, and he did not waste any time and immediately rushed towards the zombie to collaborate with Flag Array. Yi Shiwen had nurtured Flag Array exactly for situations like this. It was like his last card to deal with opponents at much higher level. He did not need to use it against the two tyrants because he himself was enough to deal with them, plus his pride did not allow him to use Flag Array to beat those two. Even after keeping in mind the large disparity between Truth 9th Stage and Half-Step Legendary Realm, Yi Shiwen knew that Flag Array could work very well for distracting an opponent, giving him enough time for strategizing and healing. With the help of this divine tool, he was confident that he could constrain and perhaps even kill this zombie. Yi Shiwen was not a fool and was not just fully depending on the Flag Array's distraction ability. In the end, he would have to wait patiently for the right time and personally act, using his golden Bodis invincible strength, to defeat the zombie. One must know that this zombie's one punch could kill an expert of Truth 9th layer, therefore, so far, Yi Shiwen had been acting cautiously and must continue to do so. For Yi Shiwen, this was a rare experience of fighting with a warrior of half-step Legendary Realm. Yi Shiwen was going to obtain enormous benefit from this battle. Tianyuan Mirror! Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. Tianyuan Mirror suddenly appeared out of nowhere and released a deep scarlet light that enveloped his body. Some of it penetrated into his body and merged with his flesh and blood, considerably raising his strength a notch. Yi Shiwen, this is an excellent opportunity. Kill this zombie and take its Cordan. It will drastically improve your cultivation level, and that too in a very short time. Yemo was standing on Yi Zaiwen's shoulder as he gave his suggestion in a very excited manner. In reality, Yi Zaiwen's inner state was still at Truth's 7th stage and the zombie, despite being suppressed, was at half-step legendary realm, so its Cordan, when consumed, would be sufficient to help him have a breakthrough in a very short time. Then he would step into Truth 8th stage and his battle strength would reach half-step legendary realm, if not directly reaching the legendary realm. But after reaching the peak of Truth 9th layer, his fighting strength would actually reach legendary realm. At that time, he would have easily surpassed Emperor Chen and the others, thereby standing at the top of the younger generation of the Southeast region. Even while counting the top experts of the previous generation, he would still be considered at the top. For others, a zombie's Cordan, also called Zombie Dan, was a deadly poisonous drug, but that was not the case for Yi Shiwen because his Tianyuan mirror could purify drugs, even the poisonous ones, and transform them into nourishing drugs. But anyway, he must first kill this tyrannical zombie to obtain its core. Yi Shiwen used his hands to tear a golden arc of light and shot it at the zombie. It seemed as if space itself had been torn to welcome the golden arc of light from another world, and all must submit in front of the glory of this endless divine beam of light from another worldly source. The zombie shot its palm and its fingernails turned in a frightening claw, like an iron hook which quickly approached Yi Shiwen to trap his neck. The iron hook claw was a secret technique used by zombies and it was considered a very frightening technique. Boom! The two sides clashed almost at the same time. Yi Ziwen's golden body with God's defense, when coupled with the defense granted by Tianyuan Mirror, was finally able to compensate the gap. As soon as the two tyrannical beings collided, it seemed like the entire world would collapse. Bang! The terrible force generated in the explosion sent both of them flying in opposite directions. In the zombie's hand, a terrible crack opened up in its tough flesh and purple blood oozed out and spattered on the ground. The blood was extremely toxic and corrosive, and instantly began to corrode the ground upon contact. But Yi Shiwen was also not in a good shape. His gilded tyrant form disappeared all of a sudden, and his red blood splashed out while also containing traces of golden threads. The ominous and vindictive color got stronger in the zombie's eyes. It roared again and once again ran towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen did not waste time and fully concentrated on using Phoenix regeneration to repair his wound. Soon, his inner state was restored to its peak. He glanced at the zombie that was crazily running towards him, and he also immediately rushed forward to greet the incoming attack. Both sides were tyrannical, outrageously powerful, and their battle was based on the direct clash of bodies. Especially, there was an ever-increasing burning rage in the zombie's green eyes as if it despised the very existence of this world and wouldn't stop before it would bring upon death to this world. Yi Shiwen looked calm and tranquil, just a crack in his flesh could not make him blink an eye. Phoenix regeneration technique was very magical, and once again restored him to a perfect state. He once again shot and released a coiling dragon almost instantly. The coiling dragon looked upward and gave out a long and loud roar. Its roar was like a thunderclap, and at the same time, mighty dragon chi spread everywhere, and restrained Inchi and Deadka which were overflowing in the vicinity. It was like a terrible explosion of light. The epitome of positive energy. The banisher of evil spirits. Yi Shiwen used coiling dragon palm, and suddenly, the entire world lost its color. As if only the coiling dragon existed in the world and nothing else. The coiling dragon rushed towards the zombie and attacked it with its claws. Yi Shiwen also claimed a shot at the same time, but in that zombie's eyes, instead of seeing a panic-stricken look, he saw a rather calm look. Just like demon beasts, it was not easy for zombies to gain wisdom and intelligence. Their very existence was not tolerated in the world and was basically called a blasphemous existence. The world law that was exploited for making zombies was also considered one of the most blasphemous laws in the world. Zombies just followed instincts and worked on the leftover instincts from when they were alive. But there were some extremely powerful zombies who still had an opportunity to develop wisdom. Yi Shiwen was facing a zombie that had not yet fully reached legendary realm. It was certainly better than ordinary zombies that followed only instincts, but it was also far from obtaining a complicated thinking ability. Its wisdom was very limited and his intelligence had only slightly gotten rid of the so-called instinct-driven thought process. This was a bitter fight and both sides were trying their best to eliminate the opponent as soon as possible. Each of their clashes was world-shattering and causing destruction in the surrounding areas. The battle had reached the phase in which blood was splashing in all directions. Sometimes, they were colliding in the mid-air and causing havoc in the forest area that had now simply been reduced to a wasteland. The zombie fiercely dashed towards Yi Shiwen like a bulldozer. The coiling dragon soared in the sky and fiercely strangled the zombie. It seemed as if the coiling dragon had come on a punitive expedition. However, even so, even after using various methods, there were still some disparities between the powers of the zombie and Yi Shiwen. To be continued. Chapter 262. Chapter 262 Slaughtered Zombie. It was a brutal contest of resilience and toughness among the two tyrannical masters. Once again, a mighty explosion occurred and blasted both of them in opposite directions. Both of them had their skins peeled off and blood oozing out of their wounds, but none of the two was willing to stop fighting. For a zombie, its body itself was the most powerful weapon. A zombie did not feel pain and wouldn't stop rampaging, even when its limbs were torn off or its head was severed from its body, because right after transforming into a zombie, its body was occupied by evil spirits, ending up making the whole corpse just a tool. So even if the head was severed from a zombie's body, other body parts would still continue to move because a zombie's body was not controlled by its brain, but by the evil spirits. The zombie did not stop even when it was seriously injured in the last attack and immediately rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Meanwhile, Yi Shiwen was standing like a mountain while an endless amount of imposing aura was gushing out of his body, making him appear like a mighty god of war. Phoenix Regeneration was working non-stop to heal his injuries and restore his inner state to its max, and in a short time, he was back to his peak condition. Yi Shiwen also did not care about the injuries since Phoenix Regeneration was the biggest advantage he held, and by relying on it, he could always continue to maintain his present tyrannical battle efficiency. And even if that zombie did not care about its injuries, it still could not stop a gradual decrement in its battle efficiency as it was constantly running amok and wasting energy. So, a long battle would actually be more favorable for Yi Shiwen because even a zombie of half-step legendary realm could be slowly exhausted to death. Although Yi Shiwen would have to consume a lot of his life essence and vitality, he refused to give up, otherwise, only a dead end would greet him if he was unwilling to make decisive sacrifices whenever needed. Retreat was not an option, it certainly wasn't an option. Roar! The zombie lifted its face upwards, roared and released its poisonous chi in the surrounding area. Being a zombie, it was fully detached from reincarnation cycle, and just like a monster from hell, it released an ominous imposing aura, breaking the shackles of the world and swept across in all directions. Yi Shiwen seemed all prepared to face the fury of this zombie. Yi Shiwen also roared and there exploded a dazzling divine light from within his clothes as if to conquer the entire universe and subdue the heavens. The battle had entered its final phase and it did not seem like this battle was going on between a human and a zombie, but between two legendary beings, belonging to two different universes. It had mostly been a contest between two invincible bodies, but the extent of this battle had not yet reached the most tragic state. Much worse was about to come. The zombie's green eyes were flashing fiercely, and it waved its fists in a strange manner to display zombie-specific martial art that derived chi from its arteries. Yi Shiwen also went all out, and used Coiling Dragon Palm to summon a huge coiling dragon. It gave out a long and loud cry and soared into the sky, wantonly dancing, and it seemed like the whole belonged to it, now. As if a real legendary dragon had come out of the fables to dominate the entire world. The coiling dragon's very presence was suppressing Inchi and Deadki in the atmosphere. Bang! The battle had entered an extremely frigid phase, and suddenly Yi Zaiwen's chest was penetrated by the zombie's sharp iron claws. And the very next instant, the zombie retracted its claws and tore off a big chunk of flesh and meat from his chest. But things did not go well for the zombie as well. Its whole body was nipped by the coiling dragon, and as a result of that, Its bones were now visible through the several wounds spread all over its body. Yi Zaiwen's golden defense had been broken by the zombie's iron claws, and a fatal wound could be seen oozing blood from his chest area. But at the same time, his wound was also healing at an incredibly fast speed, and within a few breaths' time, he was back to normal. Of course, there was no trace of any wound on his chest region, and he was once again at his peak condition. Boom! Both sides severely clashed again and caused a massive explosion in the sky, resulting in a burst of dazzling golden light and splashing blood in all directions. Rumble! Rumble! Yi Shiwen noticed that each time the zombie attacked with its claws, it drew the power of world laws and invoked suppression upon him as a result of the fluctuations in world laws. One must know that suppression effect of world laws was applicable only to the experts of Truth Realm and below, because it was extremely difficult for them to comprehend world laws, and they easily succumbed under their might, in turn facing an overwhelming suppression. This was actually the biggest difference between an expert at Truth Ninth Peak and an expert at Half-Step Legendary Realm. It was very difficult to comprehend world laws, and that was the reason why only a small numbers of experts entered into the Half-Step Legendary Realm. Even in the younger generation, only a handful of experts, below the age of 150 years, were able to step into Half-Step Legendary Realm, but there were many experts at Truth Ninth Stage in comparison. Although there were several legendary level experts in Yuan School, but that was the result of 1,000 years of accumulation. And considering the fact that there had been millions of disciples in the history of Yuan School, there were only a few dozen disciples who had managed to step into the legendary realm. So, one could see that legendary experts were quite rare existences. There were not more than 200 legendary experts in the entire Great Yu State, and that 2 out of tens of billions of people. So, one could understand how difficult it really was to step into the legendary realm. A legendary level expert was capable of invoking complete suppression. When considering the elites from all of the 10 countries of Southeast region, there were only 20 to 30 people who had managed to achieve the legendary realm before reaching the age of 150. This meant that on an average, only 2 to 3 people per country were able to achieve such a feat. Shi Fifan was one such example, as he was able to reach half-step legendary realm at a young age. So even if there were hundreds of true disciples at Truth Ninth Stage, some being at the peak of Truth Ninth Stage, but even so, they were still considered nothing in front of the 4 pro disciples. This was a crucial step, and if this step was taken within a short period of time, then it would directly determine their future success. If an ordinary expert was facing such law fluctuations which were being orchestrated by the zombie, then that expert would have been in an utterly miserable state by now. But thankfully, Yi Shiwen had also comprehended a section of the law debris. The depth of his comprehension was not comparable to that of the zombie, but was enough to offset the suppression effect that was being caused by the fluctuations in world laws. Heaven and earth seemed to have lost their luster in front of the tyrannical battle going on between these two monsters. Spiraling energies were spreading in all directions. Thundering explosions and shock waves had reduced this entire forest area to a wasteland. Yi Shiwen was not at all worried, on the contrary. He was very excited to have come across such a rare opportunity to experience fighting with a higher-level tyrannical monster, a monster that possessed an invincible body just like him. Perhaps he had a subconscious lust for violent and bloody battles, and he himself was unaware about that. The zombie was getting injured again and again, while Yi Shiwen continued to remain at his peak condition thanks to Phoenix regeneration. With the help of this technique, he could repeatedly challenge opponents of much higher level than his own. Not to mention, he could also participate in deadly battles without worrying about getting seriously injured. He dared to challenge a tyrannical opponent not just to sharpen his own skills but also to obtain the biggest advantage in the form of battle experience, and also in the form of an invincible confidence level. Most people, even the so-called peerless geniuses, were afraid to do so, but Yi Shiwen dared to take this risk thanks to Phoenix regeneration. If anyone could see this battle, they would surely feel frightened to no limit. The zombie had slowly started to lose its advantage over Yi Shiwen because it was getting tired and was taking a lot of damage. Although Yi Shiwen was at his peak condition, he still could not hide his pale complexion. This was the consequence of overusing his life essence. Even his golden defense wasn't able to cover up his pale complexion. In other words, Yi Shiwen was burning his own life energy for the sake of winning this battle. Everyone cherished their lives. After all, their lifespan was limited and no one wanted to consume their own lifespan and die early because time was very crucial to cultivate and step into next realm in order to increase the lifespan. However, Yi Shiwen was not afraid of losing several years from his lifespan. In just a few years' time, he had reached Truth's 7th stage all the way from Hotian 3rd stage. It could be said that his cultivation speed was insanely fast, and so unlike others, he did not need to spend a lot of years to step into the legendary realm in order to obtain a huge lifespan. Moreover, he always thought that life was not for saving up. People must fearlessly move forward and live the way they want. The zombie roared and its helmet and armor suddenly shattered into pieces. When it was alive, it used to be a general and had fought for countless years, killing countless enemies in his career. So far, the battle was stuck in a tie, but one thing was clear, that it was not going to resign in front of Yi Shiwen. The zombie blasted a punch and swept away an endless amount of poisonous dead ki towards Yi Shiwen. He noticed that the golden defense had started to melt due to its corrosive effect. "Looks like I do not need to retrograde today to cut down a legend," Yi Shiwen said in his heart, and finally began to go all out without any restraint. He immediately used coiling dragon palm and an endless amount of dragon chi, combined with golden divinities, collided with the zombie's attack in midair, and the resulting explosion was so vast that it camouflaged the entire sky. Suddenly, the ground cracked open when a massive sword intention condensed in his hand. Yi Shiwen had also embedded golden divinities into this sword intention. This terrifying golden sword intention was capable of killing demons, devils, ghosts, goblins, and all sorts of creatures in one fell swoop. Yi Shiwen stared coldly at the zombie. The coiling dragon was roaring again and again. At this time, Yi Shiwen opened his devil wings and instantly arrived in front of that zombie. Boom! The terrifying golden sword intention struck horizontally as if to puncture the world itself, and it instantly crashed into its body. The zombie used its hands to block this attack, but the destructive power of golden divinities was so tyrannical that it directly routed the zombie's defense and pierced through its body, destroying all the evil spirits that were occupying its body. To be continued. Chapter 263. Chapter 263 Slaughters again. Boom! After that hit, the zombie collapsed on the ground. Hoo! Yi Shiwen was breathing heavily as he just now used his most powerful attack. He had been hiding it from the zombie all this time, and used it right when he saw an opening. Yi Shiwen was assuming that there was a small part of wisdom still present in that zombie's mind, so he remained patient, and even if he was facing tough moments during the fight, he still continued to wait till the time was right and finished off the zombie in one shot. Yi Shiwen took a break and let Phoenix Regeneration heal his injuries, though this time, the consumption of life essence was not much. Then, he dug out the zombie Dan from its body and immediately flew in the direction where the team of experts was still fighting with the other zombie. Right now, Emperor Chen and the other experts were extremely exhausted. They were having a hard time dealing with a half-step legendary zombie. It was rampaging, killing people, and almost no one could stop it. Even the joint attacks of Emperor Qin and Qing Su were not enough to stop it or inflict serious injuries. It was being difficult for these experts to attack the zombie due to the fluctuations in world laws surrounding the zombie. The disparity in strength was too huge to surmount, and dozens of human experts had already been killed by it. Only 300 individuals were still alive, which basically indicated that the team of human experts had faced heavy losses in this regard. Emperor Qin gave out a long and loud battle cry and produced an avalanche of energy leaking out of his body. The energy condensed to form a shadow that looked very similar to him, except it had a pair of abnormally cold eyes. Although he was having a hard time dealing with this zombie, he was not at all scared of it and attacked without hesitation. This was a terrifying attack skill where he was using his own shadow as a backup. He could not throw in the towel, especially when Yi Shiwen was risking his own life to distract a zombie, and he was doing it on his own. But here, so many people were together, and still unable to deal with one zombie. This was simply a big blow to his pride and self-esteem. Although he knew that Yi Zaiwen's case was special as he happened to have a strong body, his pride still would not allow him to admit defeat. He wanted to be stronger than anyone no matter what. Emperor Chen's attack also incurred huge fluctuations in the world laws. It was obvious that he had already started to meditate and comprehend world laws, preparing to enter the half-step legendary realm. Therefore, law suppression was not working on him. One could notice this trait in his violent and frightening imposing aura. Boom! Emperor Chen's fist blasted on the zombie's tough body and exploded into a burst of terrifying rippling waves of light. It seemed like this fist was aiming to destroy the stars. Boom! This punch was extremely terrifying, but the zombie simply disregarded its own safety and retaliated by throwing its fist at him. Although the zombie's fist was basically a clenched bone claw, it still caused a massive explosion as if to blow away the universe itself and reopen the world of chaos. Stop! At this time, Qing Su shouted loudly and his spiritual voice echoed in the area. As a result of that, the zombie's movements slowed down a bit and Emperor Chen, who was sitting on his pet lion, managed to dodge quickly and somehow escape the range of the fist attack. Even if a half of the zombie's body was severely injured by Emperor Chen's attack, it was still very terrifying to fight against and held tyrannical prowess. Emperor Chen's eyes were filled with anger. He was, what you'd call, a slave of his pride. He was sitting straight on his pet lion like a mountain and suddenly rushed towards that zombie. He once again used the same attack to finish off the zombie in one fell swoop. Boom! The power capable of shattering stars once again broke out and spread sections of Tao everywhere. Qing Su was also closely following him and staying by his side. This is what one would call immeasurable revere. Emperor Chen's shadow that had stayed behind him all this time suddenly resonated with the flashing Tao. It is said that you are in Tao and Tao is within you. Right now, this shadow had thoroughly merged with Tao, thereby increasing its power drastically. Boom! Emperor Chen, his shadow and Qing Su together attacked the zombie and swept away mighty shock waves in all directions. Bang! But in a blink of an eye, his shadow dissipated and both he and his pet lion were sent flying miles away from there. He spurted out blood from his mouth and blood was also oozing out from several wounds on his body. Qing Su was also sent flying all the way until he was caught by his pet crane. This was really a horrifying collision. Meanwhile, the zombie killed 2 more people when everyone resorted to all sorts of martial arts and divine tools to attack it. They basically tried to take advantage of this explosion as an opportunity to attack it. Boom! 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 It was a terrible collision and the zombie certainly wasn't able to react rapidly. By the time it made its move, it had already been attacked and severely injured by the joint attack from almost 300 experts. However, this joint attack was not enough to completely eliminate it. Its whole body was covered in its own blood and looked like a tattered sack of rotten meat. But it was still roaring and its formidable pressure was frightening people, making it difficult for them to fight it head-on. Emperor Chen's body was also covered in wounds, but he still stood firmly. He blundered by underestimating a half-step legendary zombie and by also underestimating the gap between half-step legendary realm and truth 9th peak. Not to mention, this zombie was already under the suppression that appeared once in 1,000 years. So, in other words, if it was at its full potential then no one would have survived till now. Suddenly, there came a distant howling sound, and the very next instant, a human figure arrived at a tyrannical speed and struck with a long blade, instantly chopping the zombie, from head to foot, into 2 halves. Is that Yi Shiwen? Yes, Yi Shiwen is back, but wait, where is that other zombie? What happened to it? Yes, don't tell me he killed that zombie. That's impossible. Everyone was extremely shocked by his unexpected arrival. Was it actually possible that Yi Shiwen actually managed to kill a half-step legendary zombie all by himself? The very thought of it was striking terror in their hearts, but they had to accept the reality that Yi Shiwen was standing in front of them and was uninjured. Emperor Chen was shocked the most and staring at Yi Shiwen as if he was witnessing a miracle. Yu Zaiwen's plan was to distract that zombie, but if he really killed it, then this was really no different than a miracle in the eyes of other experts. If I cannot do it, we all will die. All of them remembered the statement he made before departing, succinct but powerful. This kind of monstrous self-confidence was simply known to invincible beings. Yu Zaiwen's golden body released a golden beam of light that instantly crashed into that zombie's almost bisected body. Then he shot his palm out that released a golden dragon into the sky. Roar! The zombie was roaring with a look of terror and confusion in its eyes. It also threw its iron claw fist at Yi Shiwen. Boom! Its tyrannical flesh was actually blown apart by Yi Zaiwen's golden dragon. Afterward, Yi Shiwen grabbed its arms and tore them off its body, which made painful, heart-wrenching sounds. Then he threw those arms far away from its body. Right now, Yi Shiwen was at his peak condition and nothing could stop him. But this zombie was weakened and injured. Yi Shiwen once again pounded his palm on its torso, and that resulted in an explosion. Everyone was alarmed and afraid, thinking in their hearts that who was actually more terrifying? Yi Shiwen or zombie? The way Yi Shiwen was dismembering the zombie in front of everyone, they were astonished as to how he was even able to do that. They obviously did not know that Yi Shiwen possessed the golden body of gods. The zombie's roars were scary and terror-inspiring. All of a sudden, there was a great explosion caused by Yi Shiwen's palm attack, and he managed laying a major blow to its life force. In the end, he finished it off by stamping on its chest and crushing its chest region. The golden divinities crawled from his leg into its body and destroyed all the evil spirits occupying its body. Now the only thing left was taking its core down. Chapter 264. Chapter 264. Supreme Figure. Everyone was stunned and giving dumbfounded looks to Yi Shiwen. They couldn't believe their own eyes. The zombie was literally unable to fight back, and Yi Shiwen so effortlessly killed it in front of them as if it was such an easy task. Yi Shiwen managed to complete a task that such a large team of experts was unable to do. This was simply a miracle in their eyes. Yi Shiwen was merely an expert of Truth's 7th stage, while their team had several experts at the peak of Truth 9th stage. But Yi Shiwen managed to kill a half-step legendary zombie, whereas their entire team couldn't do it. So how did Yi Shiwen succeed? And what was the real extent of his power? Emperor Qin and few other experts actually knew how Yi Shiwen was able to kill that zombie because it was already seriously injured and had also exhausted most of its energy. In comparison, Yi Zaiwen's combat effectiveness was at its peak condition, not to mention the zombie was under suppression and it was mostly relying on its formidable body to fight. But once again, Yi Shiwen had an advantage of having a similarly formidable and uninjured body. In short, the zombie's defeat was inevitable the moment Yi Shiwen became its opponent. However, only a few experts were able to figure out the facts behind this miracle. Also, it would not be wrong to say that if there was someone else in place of Yi Shiwen, they wouldn't be able to kill the zombie the way he did it. Although some experts were aware of the special circumstances under which Yi Shiwen killed the zombie, they were still very shocked by a scene in which how easily a half-step legendary zombie was killed by a guy who lacked 3 levels in comparison. This was just insane and totally outrageous for the experts who were at higher levels. Yi Zaiwen's dominating aura, as well as self-confidence, was inducing envy and restlessness in their hearts. However, right now, they did not have time and intention to be sighing and feeling that way because the allied armies of demon beasts and ghost soldiers were indulged in a crazy battle with skeletons and zombies and were slowly advancing towards the peak, slaughtering and pushing back the undead along the way. It was obvious that this battle was approaching its most tragic phase, so they must finish their mission as soon as possible. The allied forces were doing their best to contain the undead army and push them backward, but it could be seen that they were not going to last very long. The urgent matter at hand was to take off the seal and end this crazy battle. "We are running out of time, so let's hurry," Yi Shiwen said. "We need to go to the summit as soon as possible to take off the seal, otherwise, we won't have a way out of this mess. The battlefield is quickly shifting towards the peak, and trust me, guys, You don't want to be anywhere close to that battlefield. Yi Shiwen was aware of the consequences they would have to face if they did not take off the seal quickly, and he also knew that they did not have a lot of time left either. The fierce undead army was truly horrifying, so the team of human experts couldn't afford to waste time as they needed to take off the seal before the Allied forces would completely exhaust their strength. Irrespective of their envy and hatred towards Yi Shiwen, the experts had to agree with his words. Right now, rather than bickering and being envious, they needed to show courage and concern towards the situation and must act as fast as possible. The team of experts once again rushed towards the summit, meanwhile, avoiding formidable zombies and skeletons on the way. They were also steering away from the palaces since almost every palace was inhabited by terrifying monsters of the legendary realm and above, but they seemed to be imprisoned inside the palaces and couldn't come out. Finally, the team took a section of road that led them straight to the summit. This section of road was too terrible and the team bumped into a few half-step legendary zombies on the way, but the good news was that these zombies appeared alone, on separate times, and the team somehow managed to either evade or distract them, whichever was deemed necessary in the situation at hand. On the hilltop, they saw a magnificent palace spread across the entire summit. It looked like a sky palace and its size was almost equivalent to that of a small town. Yi Shiwen carefully observed the entire palace and saw a giant stele hanging in the sky, right above the palace. There were big characters engraved over this giant stele and looked very dazzling. A terrifying aura was transmitting from that stele as if trying to suppress the entire world. However, a terrifying aura was surging from the palace also and rising into the sky. The palace's aura was confronting the stele's aura that was pressing down from above, thereby creating equilibrium between the two tyrannical auras in the buffer region between giant stele and palace. In this buffer region, space was collapsing and restoring itself frequently in a cyclic process, and one could also see cold pitch-black debris of space floating there. The experts were deeply affected by this scene, which was quite terror-inspiring. Even Yi Shiwen was no exception because he sensed a rogue feeling of terror lurking in his own heart. Seeing space collapsing and restoring right in front of their eyes, it seemed as if they were standing on the edge of the world where two worlds were colliding with each other, giving rise to such an apocalyptic scene. However, they had no time to think about the reason behind this phenomenon, rather they immediately went towards the palace. A signboard was floating high in the air. Heaven's Peak Palace. It was hard to speculate the level of the civilization that left behind such a legacy thousands of years ago. Yi Shiwen did not wait, and immediately rushed forward towards the palace. As soon as they entered the palace compound, they heard intermittent sounds of a bell ringing unceasing. Yes, it was the same bell ringing that has summoned these young geniuses to the Demon Island. They rushed all the way inside the palace compound and actually saw an ancient clock bell ringing constantly. Ding-dong! 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 The bell was ringing non-stop and also releasing fluctuating sound waves, but only in its vicinity due to some kind of barrier. The answer to this was a huge seal that was hovering over this ancient bell and releasing a mysterious glow that contained a dominating power, very similar to the power contained in world laws but much more intense. Everyone noticed that the seal's power was restricting the bell's power. "That's the seal we are looking for," an expert said aloud while his eyes were totally focused on the seal. The tomb slave had informed them about this seal and also told them that they must remove the seal in order to quell the undead army. While they were all set to finish the task, all of a sudden, the palace doors made a squeak sound and opened wide. And a tall figure with a demonic aura wantonly revolving around him came out. His form was blurred and fuzzy and basically looked like a human shadow with a pair of red eyes. He also possessed a terror-inspiring demonic aura. The experts suddenly stopped when they saw this shadowy figure, and instinctively took one step back. They had seen a lot of weird things on this island, but this was probably the weirdest of them all. Ding-dong! The bell suddenly began to ring faster, and even though a seal was placed on it, it still managed to shoot a condensed form of sonic energy at that shadow. The shadowy figure lifted his claws, directly grabbed that mass of sonic energy, and tore it apart. Boom! At this time, the fluctuating mass of energy surrounding the bell suddenly condensed and seemed to have actually opened up a portal, and all of a sudden, a celestial figure slowly walked out of it. He was clad in an emperor's long robe and possessed an unimaginable imposing aura. The human experts were so much affected by his presence that they felt like bowing down on their knees and worshipped this divine being. And at this time, Tianyuan Mirror suddenly began to shiver violently as if feeling a hint of provocation. Yes, Yishuan had never seen Tianyuan Mirror acting this way no matter what kind of tyrannical episode he had faced so far. "Yemo, what's happening here?" Yishuan asked loudly in his mind. But he suddenly realized that Yemo was fully suppressed inside Tianyuan Mirror, and did not dare to say anything. It seemed as if Yemo no longer existed inside the mirror, and had completely disappeared without a trace. Something like this happened only once when that tyrannical sword expert had suddenly appeared and used his sword in tension on by Mojiao disciples. But even back then, Yemo was not this much scared, which indicated that this celestial figure was definitely an emperor-level expert. After coming out of the portal that appeared on the bell, the celestial emperor slowly walked away from the bell but soon bumped into the seal. However, he quickly bypassed the barrier and looked coldly at that shadow. As soon as the celestial emperor walked out of the barrier, no one in the team of human experts was able to bear the incredible pressure and kneeled down on the ground. Even Emperor Qin and the other top experts were no exceptions. In fact, even Yishuan was not able to resist this pressure despite having the support of Tianyuan Mirror. Ever since he obtained Tianyuan Mirror, he was never bothered by his opponent's coercion, which was more of a joke in his eyes. Tianyuan Mirror was a top-tier divine tool of the Devil King himself, so only those experts, who were at a level higher than him, would be able to suppress Yishuan. Therefore, Yishuan had never experienced suppression from coercion. Even a high-level legendary expert wouldn't succeed to bring Yishuan to his knees by simply using their imposing aura. However, now that he did not have the shelter of Tianyuan Mirror, he immediately felt a terrifying pressure rampaging upon his body. "Insolent fool!" The celestial emperor spoke, and it seemed as if his words were promulgating the law to be enforced. As soon as he said these words, everyone felt like they did the biggest mistake of their life by coming here and must apologize if they wanted to live. But the celestial emperor did not even look at Yishuan and the others, who, like a group of ants, did not deserve his attention at all. Those words were actually meant for that shadow. The celestial emperor looked sternly at the shadow, and space around him began to fluctuate and disintegrate. To be continued. Chapter 265. Chapter 265. Shocking secret. In the eyes of such a supreme figure, this mortal world was insignificant in a way, and same could be considered about the mortals. It could be seen that he had experienced innumerable eras and must have been to several worlds. It was as if he had crossed the river of time to appear here, and it was fair to say that mortals wouldn't be able to comprehend such an entity. He possessed the kind of imposing aura only known to have been displayed by great tyrants of the universe. The kind of suppression that could make everyone submit to this domineering figure, just like the legendary gods mentioned in fables. Even if everyone knew that this was possibly not his main body, but seeing such a supreme-level figure standing right in front of them still made them have a feeling of prostrating themselves sincerely and worship him. "I would not kneel down in front of anyone, never, even when the god itself appears in front of me." Emperor Qin clenched his teeth and was enduring the incredible pressure. The other experts heard him growl and saw how he was unwilling to surrender to this supreme figure, and not willing to kneel down. His legs were firmly fixed on the ground as if two iron pillars were nailed to the ground, unwilling to bend. His face was covered in cold sweat, and his entire body was trembling fiercely. He was a very stubborn man, indeed. Not just Emperor Qin, even Qing Su, Yishuan, Warhawk, and the other top experts were also refusing to kneel down, and were still somehow standing. Their stance was simple: humiliation was worse than dying, so they would rather die standing instead of kneeling down and live. These were the few experts who possessed invincible will along with great ambitions. Those who wanted to dominate the entire world. In that case, how could they just bend their knees and prostrate in front of anyone? Indeed, This supreme figure seemed to come from a superior race from ancient times, but what they were seeing was certainly just a shell of the original being, and if they bowed down in front of it, then it would utterly destroy their indomitable hearts. After experiencing this, one thing was guaranteed, that the impression left by this domineering celestial figure would never ever leave their hearts. At this time, all of the demon beast cubs, namely Golden Lion, Yellow Crane, Dragon Butterfly and Golden Winged Eagle, felt weak in the legs and fell down on the ground and began to cry loudly, with large bundles of tears rolling down from their eyes. The Golden Lion cub was fortunately quite ignorant, and did not understand what was going on, but the Wolf cub undeniably possessed far more wisdom than the other cubs and was a lot more mature as well. But at this time, he was the saddest one, and his howling sound was indicating the intense sadness in his heart. He was crying tears of sorrow, not like an ignorant cub that cries for himself, but like an adult that was crying due to a serious reason that was causing him pain. His sorrowful crying voice and howls, extremely pitiful appearance explained his tragic state. Even Mu Ling was confused because he could not understand how a foul-mouthed, yet wise wolf cub suddenly began to behave like this. Yi Xuan was also shocked by this and did not know what to do. The way the wolf cub was crying right now, it seemed as if he was grieving the death of his father. The supreme figure walked forward step by step, and as soon as he began to walk, a golden lotus emerged from the ground. All eyes were immediately focused on that magnificent golden lotus, and they all saw that it was not condensed out of his power, but purely manifested out of some pure world law. In other words, the world itself honored his presence by giving him a tribute in the form of this grand and pure golden lotus. It made everyone have a chill feeling inside their hearts when they tried to analyze this by considering the extent of this supreme figure's power and the recognition he got from the world itself. It was as if they were like commoners in front of a noble existence. Yi Xuan was instantly reminded of a legendary character from an ancient fable, and how it was impossible for others to figure out the extent of his cultivation. Similarly, there was no way to try and speculate the cultivation level of this supreme figure, but it could be said that it was far, far beyond the legendary realm. The supreme figure walked step by step with his sharp and all-encompassing vision, observing everything around him. Whenever he took a step, the world trembled around him and trails of violent aura would ravage the space around him. That supreme figure's eyes looked like that of an eagle, filled with confidence and pride, not to mention he possessed an invincible majesty. To an extent that no one was daring to look him in the eye. "How can someone be so strong?" a young expert said with a dumbfounded expression on his face. This was the first time he experienced something like this and couldn't help but express his shock. "Demon Emperor, you used to be strong, but that is a thing of the past." The shadow suddenly issued an owl-like raucous laughter. "But no matter how magnificent you were during your lifetime, death is always the final verdict and shows you the path to a home you can return to. The worst decision you made was to refuse to embrace death. You rejected our offer when you could also have become a master of death, but unfortunately, an influence that once deterred the 10,000 worlds has gone downhill to such a pathetic state," the shadow said in a mocking tone. "Demon Emperor?" Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even an ordinary person with basic general knowledge would know the weight contained in these two words. The very term emperor held a major significance irrespective of which race's name was put ahead of it. For example, human emperor, demon emperor, devil emperor, and so on. But using these terms casually without any truth or basis was an absolute taboo. Even most tyrannical experts of the world were afraid to call themselves so because it was no different than courting death by proclaiming oneself to be one. This was not a talk about one world but all of the 10,000 worlds, and a demon emperor was a being who was not just a local lord, he was the emperor of entire demon race that was spread throughout the 10,000 worlds community. You just could not claim to be an emperor and not face the consequences. And those who dared to call themselves emperors also had the ability to support their claim. Even in the ancient times, no one dared to claim of being an emperor so easily. Yi Shiwen did not know much about the history of demon race or demon emperor, but it was quite understandable if one would say that this supreme figure had frightened the 10,000 worlds community in the ancient times when demon race used to be at its peak. Such a great being, even if he was not a human being, was worth giving respect. At this time, Yi Shiwen remembered a myth from his previous life. The myth talked about the Jade Emperor who had ascended the throne of the heaven, but was it actually the legendary Demon Emperor who actually did it? Demon Emperor of the Heaven. This was just a myth, but Yi Shiwen could still tell the undeniable similarities. This was enough to instantly accelerate his breathing out of surprise and excitement. Demon Emperor, Heaven's Peak Palace, and a lost civilization. These all things indicated startling similarities between the myth on the earth and the things he saw here in this world. What exactly happened in the ancient times? There were traces of Demon Emperor's existence in several legends and myths on the earth, but most of them were unofficially recorded ones. They did not give a solid proof about the existence of Demon Emperor of the Heaven. Jade Emperor was the one who dominated the heaven in the legend of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Yi Shiwen could see a solid connection between the hidden history of this world and the myths on the earth, and in both cases, Demon Emperor had been kept a secret officially. He could faintly feel that perhaps he had come across something that was surprisingly being kept a universal secret. However, Yi Shiwen's breathing accelerated not because of these legends, but because these things could clearly be linked with the legends on the earth. Could it be that the earth was related to the heaven of this world? Yi Shiwen was most concerned about this point. Initially, when he had come to know that he crossed to this world from the earth, he was devastated because he had read so many novels on the same plotline and had never read about anyone returning home. However, today his palpitation accelerated suddenly when he speculated that these worlds were somehow linked. If the earth was also in a world that was part of the 10,000 worlds community, then he might be able to cross the worlds. He, then, would have an opportunity to go back home. Thinking of this, he simply was unable to restrain himself. One must know that although he had fully invested his time and heart in gaining the power to be able to protect his current family, he had always dreamed of returning to the earth. He considered it a distraction and would always suppress the thoughts about going back to the earth. If someone was to tell him now that everybody wants to cross to a different world because it's thrilling, then why did he want to return to the earth? Then, he would certainly slap them into oblivion. Only an idiot would willingly want to pass through to a different world, or perhaps people with special situations want that to happen. When considering Yi Shiwen's case, he never involved himself in romance and women whom he thought was a waste of time and money. He was not an orphan, and neither was he an outcast. He was neither struck by the lightning, nor was he hit by a truck. He used to be the most average kind of person with most average lifestyle in his past life and never cherished the idea of going to a different world. He was separated from his family, and loved ones just like that. Family was always the most important for him, and even in this world, he treasured his family more than anything, especially because he lost it one time and did not want to go through the same pain again. No wonder his enemies had to face the wrath of the Emperor whenever they threatened his family's security. Now it seemed like it was possible to go back to the earth, so how could he not be excited about it? Although this news might very well be useless in the current scenario, as crossing worlds was an inaccessible concept for Yi Shiwen, and even after finding out that it was possible, he might not be able to find a way to do that, but even so, he was still optimistic about it. Yi Shiwen felt that this shadow's words very shocking, to be honest. The decline of ancient heaven on the earth should have in the records, but there were none. As if something happened at all, and this led to the formation of a flawed history. According to what the shadow said, there seemed to be some kind of relationship between the decline of the ancient heaven in 2 different worlds. As if it was the result of the direct decline of the ancient heaven that was unique to all worlds, including the earth. Ancient heaven had innumerable powerhouses, and their only commander was the Demon Emperor. All of the 10,000 world community was scared of Demon Emperor, whose eternal glory had spread across the worlds. Such an almighty and tyrannical influence that continued to exist for millions of years actually declined when challenged by the unknown influence to which this shadow belonged to. This deduction was extremely shocking. Emperor Chen and the others were also in shock after they heard the ancient secret that actually blew up their minds. Although they did not know about the famous myth on the earth, this was still more than enough to leave them in utter shock. To be continued. Chapter 266. Chapter 266 Departure from the Island. The worst decision you made was to refuse to embrace death. You rejected our offer when you could also have become a master of death, but unfortunately, an influence that once deterred the 10,000 worlds has gone downhill to such a pathetic state. The shadow said in a mocking tone. I never thought that you would be hiding in the dark like a rat, and still haven't withered away. Demon Emperor said proudly in a gallant manner. Ha 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 ha, Demon Emperor, you are ignorant and still haven't understood that if there is light in this world, there has to be darkness as well to maintain the balance. And remember that no matter how long you manage to survive, only death is eternal in the world. The shadow laughed in a weird way as if mocking the Demon Emperor. There are some things that even you never understood after all this time. Demon Emperor said in a somewhat indifferent tone. You have overreached yourself by daring to come here in your true body. I hope you are prepared to pay the price for your foolishness. Clang! 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 There were several light flashes around his body with clanging sounds of 10,000 swords everywhere, along with the formation of a gigantic sword key and beams of light shooting everywhere in the sky. This sword intention attack was much more tyrannical than the sword intention attack that Yi Shiwen learned from a sword emperor long time ago. The Demon Emperor's sword intention was pure and extremely frightening when considering the fact that it contained the power of world laws as well. In an instant, an endless amount of sword ki coagulated to form a huge and thick curtain of swords in the sky. Everyone saw this scene and could not help but swallow their saliva. They could not make a guess about Demon Emperor's cultivation level, but judging from his awe-inspiring sword ki, it was not difficult for them to speculate that he was several realms above them. It seemed like the Demon Emperor used several world laws in conjunction for this one attack. Everyone was panic-stricken and was scared of the aftermath of this attack. They knew that even one touch of this sword ki could instantly kill them. They did not dare to stay outside and rushed into the palace. Everyone hastily entered the palace, and at this time, a loud noise resounded everywhere. An incomparably terrifying beam of light shot up into the sky and exploded, thereby instantly annihilating the palace's roof. Two figures leaped up into the sky. One was the Demon Emperor and other was that shadow. Demon Emperor was floating at a very high altitude, but his figure looked fuzzy and dimmer, as if his whole body was enveloped in a fog. Space around him was distorted, and no one could see his face as a result of that. Yi Shiwen felt as if he was looking at a sword god, a being who was capable of cutting the sky and chopping the earth into pieces. In fact, a sword god was said to be capable of chopping destiny as well. Numerous Tao-based world laws were twinkling around his body and driving an almost endless amount of sword ki in the air, all prepared to kill anyone who would dare to come close to it. The large amount of sword ki fragmented into numerous swords, and each and every one of the swords pierced through space, causing countless holes in the space which then automatically repaired on its own. This was a spectacular yet frightening scene. At this time, the shadow's enormous and tyrannical imposing aura erupted from his body and instantly spread a barrage of dead ki into the air. The spread-out dead ki then suddenly instantly condensed to form a spear and collided with the Demon Emperor's sword ki in the sky. Yi Shiwen, now is your chance. Hurry up and uncover the seal. At this time, Yi Mo's voice sounded in Yi Zaiwen's mind. Yi Shiwen did not ask him why he was hiding in front of the Demon Emperor because the answer was quite obvious. Boom! 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 The collision between dead ki and sword ki produced a horrible sight where a large section of space suddenly collapsed, just like the end of the world scenario. But right then, the Demon Emperor stretched his hand out and directly grabbed a world law out of the broken space. Afterward, he condensed that world law into a sword and struck with it, releasing a massive sword light, along with rippling world law, towards that shadow. Rumble! The entire space in the path of that sword light was cut off and a large part of it collapsed like a shattered mirror, while at the same time, the sword light continued to travel towards the shadow. The shadow also congealed a spear out of Dedki in his hands and shot a beam of black light. Boom! The impact of this terrible collision seemed to be causing the annihilation of the world, as if the entire world would collapse any moment now. At this time, Yishiwen felt a terrifying surge of energy waves coming towards him. He immediately used Tianyuan Mirror to block those energy waves and rushed all the way inside the palace hall. He finally saw the ancient bell that was constantly ringing and releasing dreadful sound wave ripples. He also saw the seal that had completely sealed the bell's power. Yishiwen, do it now! Mo suddenly shouted. Yishiwen did not hesitate to reach out and directly grab that seal, but he never thought that he would be able to tear off the seal so easily without putting much effort. Yishiwen snorted as he looked at the torn-off seal in his hands. He never imagined seeing such a pathetic seal that was able to restrain such a powerful ancient artifact, not to mention he managed to tear it off as if it was nothing more than a piece of paper. Shwa! The ancient clock bell turned into a streamer of light and flew towards the Demon Emperor. At this time, that arrogant shadow's barely noticeable face finally revealed a horrified expression. Ding dong! The bell's vigorous ringing sound echoed throughout the ominous mountain, and the sound waves overflowed everywhere. The shadow turned into a black streamer of light to escape, but the sound waves were quicker than him and instantly hit him from behind, annihilating him into dust in a flash. It seemed as if a formidable enemy like him simply did not stand a chance in front of the bell's power. The sound waves spread throughout the ominous mountain, and the entire undead army of zombies and skeletons instantly collapsed. The power of this bell was simply unimaginable. The seemingly endless undead army was instantly defeated and countless corpses fell down on the ground. The Demon Emperor glanced at the demon beast cubs once, then heaved a sigh but did not say anything. He just flew into the sky and slowly vanished into the horizon. The demon beast cubs were still crying as they saw the Demon Emperor disappear. Emperor Chen and the others looked at each other in dismay, as they had never seen demon beasts crying like this. The dark ominous clouds in the sky suddenly broke after the heavy downpour that miraculously wiped out Dedki and Inchi from the atmosphere, and the rain water, which seemed to contain some kind of miraculous power, cleaned each and every bit of evil energy from the island. All kinds of vegetation began to grow up on the island, and a bleak island suddenly evolved into a fairyland in a matter of few breaths. Everyone knew that this might be the last thing that was left behind by the Demon Emperor in this world, but they were also deeply impressed by his power and skills, which were simply out of reach of the mortals. Demon Island battle finally came to a close with a loss of several human geniuses and thousands of demon beast soldiers. Out of more than 1,000 disciples summoned to this island, only 400 managed to survive till the end. This figure also included about 100 weak disciples who actually did not participate in the final battle. Now, the survivors clearly understood why this island was called Genius Meat Grinder. Although 1 year's time had not yet passed, the Demon Island quest came to an end ahead of time. Everyone was speculating that this might be the last summoning of geniuses to this island. After this term, the Demon Island Bell would no longer summon peerless geniuses from the 10 countries of Southeast region. After the Undead Rebellion was put down for good, the very next day, a crowd of human experts gathered at the coast. They were waiting for the ship that would take them from the Demon Island to the coast of East China Sea. Since the airspace of the Demon Island was isolated from rest of the world, the safest option was to take the sea route. Both happiness and a sense of accomplishment could be seen on everyone's faces. They were somewhat tired after having finished the Demon Island quest. Of course, many experts were reluctant to leave. After all, staying on this island was very beneficial for their cultivation and experience. You are always welcome to be a guest of Wu Royal Clan. Wu Shaochuan smiled and said to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling. He was quite sad of separating from his two good friends, but being martial artists who were dedicated to the way of martial arts, they were accustomed to such scenes. Mu Ling nodded with a smile. At this time, there was a sudden commotion, and an ethereal voice sounded from afar and gradually approached the group of experts. Yi Shiwen saw a delicate figure with white skin, curved black eyebrows, and dazzling eyes, approaching him at an incredibly fast speed. It was as if he was looking at a fairy maiden with a peerless, angelic appearance. Yi Shiwen was surprised when he realized that this figure was none other than Hua Menghan. She was clad in a snow-white robe and her whole body was covered in a white aura. Also, a pair of white wings could be seen protruding out of her back. Not just Yi Shiwen. Everyone looked surprised when they saw Hua Menghan because they had never seen her on the island in the past several months. It was as if she never set foot on the island or was possibly hiding somewhere. Hua Menghan gently descended next to Yi Shiwen, and her beautiful eyes smiled at him. "Are you okay?" Yi Shiwen asked in a somewhat astonished tone. "Where were you all this time? I searched for you everywhere but couldn't find you." "It's a long story," Hua Menghan said. Yi Shiwen sensed that she had obtained a peerless treasure, and couldn't tell about it in front of everyone. Everyone around was casting envious glances at her. Judging from her speed and a pair of white wings on her back, they knew that she must have obtained some sort of treasure or heritage, and this out-of-the-world agility technique was an undeniable proof of that. Yi Shiwen noticed that she initially used to be at the first stage of Truth Realm at the time of Demon Island Bell Summons, but now she was already at Truth 9th stage. It was obvious that she obtained some kind of inconceivable heritage during last several months. Where did Shenruochen go? Yi Shiwen had some doubts in his heart, but he chose not to ask right now. At this time, he saw someone approaching at a much faster speed than Hua Menghan. It was none other than the elderly tomb slave. He showed a faint smile to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling, then waved his hand and two divine lights directly submerged the minds of Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling. Yi Shiwen immediately understood that the tomb slave fulfilled the promise to him and Mu Ling, but it seemed like others did not obtain tomb slave's heritage. Perhaps this promise was not for everyone. After the tomb slave handed over his heritage to Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling, he did not say anything and turned around to leave. Yi Shiwen was not in a mood to find out whether other experts got this heritage or not. And that was because a large ship was slowly approaching the island. To be continued. Chapter 267. Chapter 267. Chu Jinkai promoted to Legendary Realm, NT. For those who don't remember, Chu Jinkai is one of the 5 pro-disciples of Yiyuan School and also the eldest among them. Yiyuan School was not far away from the East China Sea coastline. Both Hua Menghan and Yi Shiwen displayed incredibly fast speed to reach Yiyuan School in much less time in comparison to the time it took them to reach the Demon Island. This time, they hardly spent half the time to travel from the East China Sea to Yiyuan School. Back then, Hua Menghan was on the verge of entering the 2nd stage of Truth Realm, and now she was at Truth 9th stage, which clearly showed the extraordinary heritage she obtained on the Demon Island. And Yi Shiwen was able to raise his cultivation level from Truth 4th stage to Truth 7th stage, though his battle efficiency was now comparable to Truth 9th peak. In other words, both of them reaped immense benefits on the Demon Island and would naturally display much faster speed than before. Hua Menghan was accompanied by a small white fox that was riding a beautiful rainbow and was occasionally producing faint roars. The wolf cub was on the side of Yi Shiwen, and now seemed in a better mood than earlier. Initially, Yi Shiwen wanted to know the secret of the Demon Island, but after witnessing the battle on that ominous mountain and unexpected appearance of the Demon Emperor, Yi Shiwen decided to stop pursuing this secret. He did not want to get involved in some kind of terrible secret. As they say, ignorance is bliss. Such being the case, there was no reason for Yi Shiwen to continue to keep the wolf cub under arrest. So he told the wolf cub that he was free now and could go wherever he wanted to. However, in contrary to Yi Ziwen's expectation, the wolf cub chose to stay with him and said that he did not want to stay on the Demon Island, otherwise, he would be suffocated to death. All of them were extremely fast, and soon arrived at the entrance of Yiyuan School. They were about to enter when more than a dozen disciples suddenly arrived in front of them. These were the patrolling disciples of Yiyuan School. All of them were core disciples, with each having cultivation of Xiantian 6th stage and above. They were riding tall cranes to fly this high in the sky. NT, core disciples are always in Xiantian realm because after stepping into truth realm, they become true disciples. Since Xiantian level disciples cannot fly, they are riding cranes. Yi Shiwen also used to have a crane when he was in Xiantian realm. Since the invasion of Bai Mojiao, core disciples would always come out on patrolling duty. Stop! At this time, one of the core disciples said in a loud voice and blocked the path of Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan. What do you want? Yi Shiwen put on a serious face and asked in a strict voice. True disciples enjoyed a special status in Yiyuan school, no less than the elders, let alone Yi Shiwen was the fifth pro-disciple. Then how did these core disciples dare to stop him? Even if these core disciples did not recognize them, they should have at least figured out that both Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan were true disciples of Yiyuan school since they were flying in the sky and were wearing the sex badge as well. Then why did they dare to block their path like this? Hua Menghan did not say anything, but Yi Shiwen stepped forward to deal with them. Yi Shiwen, are they the disciples of your Yiyuan school? They are pathetic losers. Newborn pups on my island are better than these good-for-nothing weaklings. The wolf cub said and seemed prepared to attack those disciples, but Yi Shiwen flicked his forehead with a finger to stop him. Do you know the consequences of stopping a true disciple? Yi Shiwen asked coldly. So, it is Brother Yi and Sister Hua. At this time, the leader of the core disciples recognized them but still did not get out of their way. But I must inform you too that security rules have changed because Bai Mojiao's rebellion is getting bigger and bigger. Brother Chu has ordered a thorough inspection of anybody who comes from outside in order to guard against spies. So, you are basically trying to say that I might bring in spies with me so you will perform an inspection? Yi Ziwen's complexion turned dark and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. So basically, under this rule, even true disciples were not eligible to pass through the entrance without having an inspection done on them. But this rule shouldn't apply on pro-disciples since Chu Jinkai himself was a pro-disciple and did not hold enough authority to put checks on the other pro-disciples. However, it was still unprecedented and totally bizarre that a bunch of core disciples dared to question two true disciples, not to mention Yi Shiwen was also a pro-disciple. Chu Jinkai indeed held great authority in the sect, but this was totally unacceptable. Could it be that his plan was to offend true disciples? We are not trying to say that, but Brother Chu has set a rule and we must abide by that, the leading disciple said. Get lost! Yi Shiwen was disinclined to speak nonsense with them. Performing inspection on him was no different than putting him in the category of a probable traitor. Would it not thoroughly degrade his dignity and prestige as a pro-disciple? And that too when he was going to be inspected by a bunch of core disciples? It was not just about being suspected or inspected by juniors, it was also about submitting to Chu Jinkai's authority, and Yi Shiwen wasn't the type of guy who would simply ignore that. Brother Yi, Sister Hua, I'm afraid you do not know that 3 months ago, Brother Chu has stepped into the legendary realm and is now going to become the head of next generation, though it has not been announced yet. Gone are the days of 5 pro-disciples. The disciple said in an arrogant tone, Brother Yi, it would be best for you to obediently get yourself inspected, otherwise if Brother Chu got to know about this, things would get pretty ugly for you. The disciple openly mocked Yi Shiwen, and it seemed like he belonged to the faction of Chu Jinkai, and that was why he was being so rampant in front of Yi Shiwen. Even if Chu Jinkai has entered the legendary realm, that doesn't mean you can disrespect me, your superior. Yi Shiwen shouted. Remember that your brother Chu won't come to save you from my wrath. You have dared to disrespect your superior, and according to the rules of Yiyuan school, you shall be punished. Yi Shiwen slapped that disciple right in the face and sent him flying far away. His figure disappeared into the horizon, and it was hard to predict how far he would go, flying like this, before falling down on the ground. Yi Shiwen was very calm at this moment, and seemed to be indulged in deep thinking. Chu Jinkai stepped into the legendary realm, so the status of other pro-disciples was no longer valid in Yiyuan school? Yi Shiwen, how dare you treat us this way? How do you plan to explain yourself in front of Brother Chu? A disciple got angry and shouted loudly. Of course, he was scared and did not expect to see Yi Shiwen reacting in such a manner. Other true disciples had already submitted to Chu Jinkai because it was now clear that he was going to become the next head of Yi Yuan's school. No one wanted to be on his bad side, and the other pro-disciples also lost their special status, thereby returning to their previous identity of true disciples. Humph, I don't need to give him an explanation, and I don't give a damn about what he thinks about me, Yi Shiwen said coldly, as he was not at all scared of Chu Jinkai. Yi Shiwen, behave yourself. Do you want to be convicted as a traitor? A familiar voice sounded from afar, and Elder Jin Xian arrived at the scene. So it's you. Yi Shiwen looked coldly at Elder Jin Xian without showing any trace of respect whatsoever. If Chu Jinkai had placed such a rule, was it also applicable on the elders? True disciples enjoyed lots of privileges in Yi Yuan's school and held much more authority than the elders. This was the reason why Luo Yifan used to be so rampant by relying on his identity as a true disciple. True disciples were superior to core disciples in status, strength, and influence. They also held enough authority to punish core disciples if deemed punishable. Not to forget, Yi Shiwen was a pro-disciple and certainly wasn't going to just stand and watch while his juniors tried to disrespect him. But Yi Shiwen soon understood that it was actually Jin Xian who was behind all this. Jin Xian must have instigated these core disciples to provoke Yi Shiwen and chose the right time to make an appearance and blame him. Yi Shiwen noticed that Jin Xian's cultivation was now at Truth 8th stage. Of course, Jin Xian must have been desperate and forcibly had a breakthrough at such an old age, otherwise, later it would be impossible to have a breakthrough. So, he got an opportunity to have a forced breakthrough and he made full use of it. Yi Shiwen did not know how he did it, but it was certainly related to Chu Jinkai. Yi Shiwen, are you trying to commit treason right after coming back to the sect? Jin Xian looked viciously at Yi Shiwen and a look of anger flashed in his eyes. Yi Shiwen had made him lose face in front of everyone. He had been thrown into the mine, never to come back to the sect again in this lifetime, all because of this one arrogant brat named Yi Shiwen. He never thought that one day he would get an opportunity to return to Yi Yuan's school and once again stand in front of Yi Shiwen. Treason, you say? These people have dared to disrespect their superiors. They are lucky that I haven't killed them already, Yi Shiwen said in a calm yet scary voice. Nonsense, they are acting in accordance with the orders from above. But I can see that you are acting suspiciously, and you also are the biggest suspect of being a spy, Jin Xian said and grinned. An ignorant elder like you wants to convict me. I think you do not wish to live anymore, Yi Shiwen said and smirked in response. I see, in that case, first I will capture you, then deliver you to the Elder Parliament. Jin Xian sneered and suddenly rushed forward. The great power of Truth 8th stage instantly manifested itself within his body. He arrived in front of Yi Shiwen like an incredibly fast storm, but since he had once been defeated before, he knew that Yi Shiwen was ridiculously strong. Hence, Jin Xian would naturally not dare to underestimate him. Damn you bastard! Yi Shiwen was furious with an intense killing intention boiling within his heart. His whole body instantly released a burst of Jinyuan and the surroundings. A disciple wants to attack an elder? This is going to invoke capital punishment upon you, Jin Xian said in a stern voice, and all of a sudden, waves of Jinyuan surged out of his body and began to revolve around him. Yi Zaiwen's Jinyuan transformed into a coiling dragon which roared loudly and crashed into the revolving protection screen of Jin Xian. Yi Shiwen did not even need to act personally because Jin Xian's revolving protection screen was immediately routed by the coiling dragon. At this time, Jin Xian shot his most powerful attack in the form of surging Jinyuan that blotted the sky and then suddenly converged towards Yi Shiwen just like squally shower. To be continued. Chapter 268. Chapter 268. Fame rises in the southeast region. Jin Xian was confident because he was at Truth 8th stage and felt superior to Yi Shiwen in not just level but strength as well. After all, Yi Zaiwen is to be nothing but a disciple of Truth 4th stage when he left for the Demon Island quest, almost half a year ago. It seems like I am going to have to teach you a lesson, Yi Shiwen sneered and stuck his hand out. It instantly transformed into a dragon claw and gave rise to Dragon Whirlwind. Boom! In a flash, Jin Xian's attack was rendered useless by the Dragon Whirlwind, and it further proceeded to fiercely collide with his body, as a result of which, he was sent flying high into the sky like a catapulted object. How is this possible? An expression of utter disbelief appeared on Jin Xian's face the moment his confidence was brutally shattered by Yi Shiwen. Jin Xian was betting on his own enhanced strength and thought that he could deal with Yi Shiwen. Not to mention he also had the backing of Chu Jinkai, but he never expected to face such a loss of face at the hands of Yi Shiwen. He never imagined that Yi Shiwen would become so terrifyingly powerful after having spent half a year on the Demon Island. He was at Truth 8th stage and there was no doubt about it, but he still wasn't able to block a single attack. In fact, on the contrary, he was sent flying like a weakling. He felt depressed because exactly same thing happened to him the last time he fought with Yi Shiwen, more than a year ago. However, unlike last time, this time, no one came to his rescue. Yi Shiwen instantly arrived in front of Jin Xian, who was injured and lying on the ground, then inserted his palm into Jin Xian's dantian and crushed it. No, please, you cannot! Yi Shiwen was so fast that he did not even get enough time to shout for help. Bang! In a blink of an eye, Jin Xian lost his cultivation and hence was crippled by Yi Shiwen. He spurted a mouthful of blood and lost consciousness due to intense pain and blood loss. Yi Shiwen coldly looked at Jin Xian and began to think, was it really Chu Jinkai's plan to bring Jin Xian back from the mines? In that case, Jin Xian must have also received some kind of mighty medicine that helped him in having a breakthrough. Yi Shiwen sneered and remembered that the misgivings between him and Chu Jinkai had started with the beginning of his enmity with Luo Yifan and Luo clan because Luo clan was a supporter of Chu Jinkai. However, later on, Yi Shiwen became the fifth pro-disciple and thus became a direct competitor of Chu Jinkai. In fact, all pro-disciples were direct competitors of each other. Not to mention, the position of sect head had always been taken by pro-disciples. And there had never been an exception to this pattern. However, no matter what might be the outcome of this, he had returned and Chu Jinkai and the other pro-disciples would have to accept his domineering presence. The news about their return set off an uproar throughout Yiyuan School. This news was bound to attract everyone's attention. After all, only 3 disciples were summoned to the Demon Island this time, and 2 of them came back safely. Since they had come earlier than the designated time of 1 year, everyone wanted to know what exactly happened there. And right after Yi Shiwen and Hua Menghan came back, something unexpected happened. Hua Menghan was made the 6th pro-disciple and became a target of public attention alongside Yi Shiwen. Everyone was surprised because she became a true disciple not long before setting out for the Demon Island, and right after coming back, she was made a pro-disciple. Something like this was simply unprecedented, while only excluding Yi Zaiwen's case, as he had also created a similar sensation when he was made the 5th pro-disciple. However, Yi Shiwen was famous for being an exception in everything, though same was not true for Hua Menghan, and that was why many were envious of her sudden, unexpected fame. Immediately, the whole Yiyuan school was discussing the clash between Yi Shiwen and Chu Jinkai. This was an important matter because Yi Shiwen powered up in the last 6 months, whereas Chu Jinkai became the only pro-disciple to step into the legendary realm. Also, a rumor spread out that it was actually Chu Jinkai who brought back Jin Xian from the mines to take Yi Shiwen down, but Jin Xian was crippled instead. Yiyuan School was once again impressed by Yi Zaiwen's strength because he was able to defeat Jin Xian, who was at Truth 8th stage. According to witnesses, Yi Shiwen was so formidable that Jin Xian wasn't able to stop even a single attack aimed at him. As time passed slowly, the matter about the Demon Island bit by bit spread not just in Yiyuan School or Great Yu State but throughout the southeast region. Everyone came to know that the 8th prince was actually killed by Yi Shiwen in a battle where he was battling against 2 experts of Truth 8th Peak. Since the 8th prince, who was also the commander of Imperial Guards, was considered the most talented genius in the younger generation of Great Yu State before the Demon Island quest started, after killing him, Yi Shiwen attained the same position by default. It could be said that Yi Shiwen was not just formidable and tough but also had extraordinary combat skills. Although Yuan school lost a valuable peerless genius in the form of Chen Ruochen, who was now missing, this trip to the Demon Island could be called successful in respect of Yuan school and only by virtue of one man, Yi Shiwen. This one name Yi Shiwen was enough to grant an illustrious prestige to Yuan school that had now become famous in all of the 10 countries of Southeast region as Yi Zaiwen sect. Yuan school was a major sect but was only famous in Great Yu State. But now that it was famous in the Southeast region, the credit would entirely go to Yi Shiwen. Yuan school used to be considered as a mid-level sect by the foreign powers, even though a famous legendary expert like Qi Fifan belonged to it. However, Yi Zaiwen's recent outstanding performance and extraordinary achievements were enough to shock foreigners and greatly contributed towards Yuan school's newfound fame in the foreign lands. Yi Shiwen not only defeated 2 experts of Truth 8th Peak at once, despite being 2 levels below them, he also slaughtered 2 half-step legendary zombies, though under some special circumstances which might have made things easier for him, but still, it was only him who was able to achieve such feats. Hence, these achievements were enough to establish his strength and formidability in the eyes of everyone. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen's fame spread everywhere. Now, his name was well known in the Southeast region and was being counted among other famous geniuses such as Emperor Qin, Qing Su, Warhawk, Ji Moon, and Wang Purple. People had come up with a list of top geniuses among the 10 counties of Southeast region, and Yi Shiwen's name was at the top of this list. Yi Shiwen suddenly became the pride of Yuan school, and now everyone was scared how Chu Jinkai was going to react. What if he tried to get rid of Yi Shiwen? After all, Yi Shiwen couldn't possibly fight with a legendary expert. In addition to Yi Shiwen, all sorts of vital information about Hua Menghan was slowly dug out because a lot of people had not understood why Hua Menghan suddenly became the 6th pro-disciple. But when news about her exploits in the Demon Island was dug out, everyone was impressed to find out that she had actually obtained the heritage of a great person on the Demon Island. This was the reason how in just half a year, she was able to jump from Truth's 2nd stage to Truth's 9th stage. One must know, obtaining a rare kind of heritage was no trivial matter because this also indicated that her future prospects were going to be limitless. Like the 8th prince had immediately become a contender for the throne in the royal clan after obtaining the heritage of 4 sacred beast sect, not to mention he had also become the most popular candidate as well. In Jinwu Jie, it was always a matter of great importance whenever a disciple was to obtain the inheritance of ancient sects or lost civilizations because it often meant that these lucky disciples would then obtain great wisdom, lost martial art techniques, and also the blessings of ancient beings. And news about Hua Menghan obtaining great benefits on the Demon Island slowly spread throughout the 10 countries of Southeast region. The Demon Island, anyway, was famous as a mysterious island that was home to legendary beasts. But this time, the surviving disciples spread all sorts of newly obtained information about the island, for example, about the existence of a tyrannical ancient demon race and the demon emperor. And if Hua Meihan had really obtained the heritage from a great being, belonging to such a lost civilization, then one could easily imagine her importance. Therefore, it was not surprising that she was made the 6th pro-disciple of Yuan school, thereby adding a bit more uncertainty to the contest for head's position. Chu Jinkai was the first pro-disciple and had maintained his power and illustrious prestige for last 100 years, so no one dared to go against him, but on several occasions, he was openly challenged by Yi Shiwen. Of course, Yi Shiwen was not a fool and it was a near impossible task to make him submit. Luo Yifan once tried to bully Yi Shiwen, and now, no one knew where his corpse was rotting. No one dared to openly mention it, but a lot of people suspected that Yi Shiwen was secretly involved in the killing of Luo Yifan. 1 month passed after Yi Shiwen returned to Qianyu Peak, but Chu Jinkai did not pull off anything to retaliate and take revenge. In this sensitive period of time, one day, Qi Fifan personally went to Qianyu Peak to meet Yi Shiwen. Qianyu faction is honored that Brother Qi has taken out some time from his busy schedule to visit us, Yi Shiwen said with a smile and welcomed Qi Fifan. Although both of them were pro-disciples, There was no need for Yishiwen to call him Brother Qi, but Yishiwen had always referred to him like that and continued to do so even after becoming a pro-disciple. After all, Qi Fifan had saved him several times. Brother Yi, I hope you will pardon me for being presumptuous enough to come here without informing. Qi Fifan also smiled and said, I would not beat around the bush and come straight to the point. Today, I have come precisely to settle things between you and Chu Jinkai. There's nothing going on between us, Yishiwen said indifferently. I know that his newly implemented inspection rule ended up causing trouble for you, and I must say that he is not at right in this regard. However, that Jin Xian incident was not arranged by him, Qi Fifan said. I feel the need to disclose something important that all pro-disciples must know. Chapter 269. Chapter 269 True Martial University. I know that his newly implemented inspection rule ended up causing trouble for you, and I must say that he is not at right in this regard. However, that Jin Xian incident was not arranged by him, Qi Fifan said. I feel the need to disclose something important that all pro-disciples must know. Oh? Please tell me, I am all ears, Yishiwen humbly replied. He recently became a pro-disciple and was mostly busy cultivating, hence was unable to learn a lot of things about pro-disciples. Actually, Yishiwen had already planned to teach Chu Jinkai a lesson if he continued to create troubles for him. Although Chu Jinkai suddenly became the most eligible candidate among all pro-disciples for the position of sect head after stepping into legendary realm, Yi Zaiwen's achievements also couldn't be ignored. In a short time of half a year, he powered up to the extent that he was able to single-handedly kill 2 half-step legendary zombies. His potential was not hidden from anyone. Yishiwen was not at all intimidated by Chu Jinkai and was confident to surpass him sooner or later. However, after listening to what Qi Fifan said, it seemed like there was some kind of misunderstanding. In fact, there is a competition among pro-disciples, but the sense of cooperation is more than cooperation. When there was a struggle going on between you and Luo Yifan, Chu Jinkai was aware of that but chose not to interfere. You know why? Qi Fifan said. Why? Yishiwen asked and recalled this was indeed the case. Chu Jinkai never tried to interfere even when a deadly battle took place between him and Luo Yifan. Perhaps, Chu Jinkai might have lent a hand to Luo Yifan behind the scenes but never did so openly. Even so, it was very unusual since Chu Jinkai could have easily interfered as a pro-disciple to save his vassal, Luo Yifan. He had all the valid reasons to attack Yishiwen, but why didn't he do so? Especially after Yishiwen became a pro-disciple, there was literally a cold war going on between him and Chu Jinkai, but even then, Chu Jinkai never really used extreme methods against him. The truth is that bystanders think that we pro-disciples are desperately and madly competing with each other for the position of sect head, Qi Fifan said. Is that a wrong perception? Yishiwen asked in a somewhat strange manner, especially because he had witnessed the fierce struggle between Chu Jinkai and Yellow Dust. Not just that, he had also seen a fierce battle between the disciples of 2 pro-factions. NT Yellow Dust is the second pro-disciple. His Chinese name is Huang Luochen, but some readers find it hard to remember his name, so I will use the easier version of his name. In fact, there isn't a life and death type of competition among us, to be honest, Qi Fifan said. And in reality, this kind of life and death struggle is among the elders and disciples for their respective favorite pro-disciple. We pro-disciples have never actually fought life and death battles, either do we intend to. Since their interests are dependent on us, therefore they are always more anxious than us, and pull things out of context to the point of exaggeration just to satisfy their own personal agendas. Qi Fifan explained. Yishiwen understood what Qi Fifan was trying to say. Indeed, sometimes other people are more anxious than you and act on your behalf without permission, making things difficult for all. In fact, I am going to tell you the truth. I have never wanted to compete for the position of sect head. Qi Fifan said this and a look of disbelief appeared on Yi Zaiwen's face all of a sudden. Qi Fifan noticed it, smiled and said, For many people, Obtaining the position of leader is their lifelong goal and they continue to compete throughout their life, but for me, it has never been a goal. So long as I want, I can easily obtain it. According to me, there are a lot of things that you can do outside the small boundary of Yuan School. The world is too big and there's so much to explore. Qi Fifan said. Brother Yi, have you heard of True Martial University? Yi Shiwen shook his head as he had never heard of True Martial University. Well, it cannot be helped. It seems like Brother Yi has devoted most of his time to cultivation and managed to enhance his cultivation in such a short time. So, lack of general knowledge is understandable. Qi Fifan made a sharp point, and Yi Shiwen immediately understood that his statement was aimed at pointing out the rapid and sharp rise in his cultivation, while trying to link it to a lack of general knowledge he showed just now. In the southern region of Zhenwujie continent, there is a famous institution named True Martial University where everyone can go and study. A lot of extremely talented geniuses from several generations converge together to study in True Martial University, in search of brighter future prospects. Qi Fifan said. I never knew about such a place. Yi Shiwen really did not know, although he had read a lot of books on various topics when he used to be in Hotian realm, but as his cultivation level advanced further, he began to focus more on martial arts practice and ancient legends to get hints about furthering his practice. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt that he did not know a lot of things. In other words, his knowledge on current affairs was weak and he needed to visit Yuan School's main library to enrich his knowledge. Otherwise, lack of general knowledge might cause major embarrassment for him. Of course, now reading books would be easier for him as he could just use his soul search skill on books for quick sorting of information and deeper understanding. Without the soul search skill, it would actually be an insane task to go through so many books, stored in the main library. Well, I really do not know when True Martial University came into existence, perhaps during the Devil War, or perhaps even earlier, no one knows when, but it has been there since time immemorial, for all curious and ambitious experts to keep their aspirations incited. Qi Fifan said. Countless talents from southern region aspire to enter this university, and not just that, countless genius evildoers, monsters, from other foreign territories also come to join True Martial University. It is hard to tell how many great people have studied in this university, and the list is very long. That is my battlefield. Qi Fifan stood up and said with a hint of yearning expression on his face. And not just me, Chu Jinkai, Yellow Dust and the other pro-disciples also yearn to enter True Martial University. All of us want to test ourselves by measuring our potential with respect to those countless evildoers. Qi Fifan said with confidence. Even if he was talking about countless geniuses from foreign lands, his flawless confidence didn't budge at all. Qi Fifan was counted among the top experts in the current generation of experts from Southeast region. But, even if he managed to enter True Martial University, there was a chance that he would just be among the ordinary lot of disciples. After all, this was the real competition among true geniuses. The competition among pro-disciples was nothing in front of it. You may know that we pro-disciples have stayed at half-step legendary realm for a long time, but do you know that we actually chose to do so? Qi Fifan asked. Yi Shiwen shook his head, but this question was already present in his heart as to why even a famous expert like Qi Fifan, who should be able to easily step into legendary realm, was stuck at half-step legendary realm. He was always puzzled by this, and it seemed like there really was a valid reason behind this. Yi Shiwen knew that these pro-disciples had been stuck at half-step legendary realm for decades. In fact, Qi Fifan reached it about 40 years ago. Was it really possible that these so-called super-talented pro-disciples were incapable of stepping into the legendary realm? Of course not. Yi Shiwen never believed in the explanation that it was actually very tough to go from half-step legendary to legendary level, and usually took decades to do so. This statement might be true for ordinary experts but definitely not for pro-disciples. In order to let experts join True Martial University, it opens once in 100 years. For ordinary people, the period of 100 years was equivalent to a lifetime, but for successful martial artists, it was simply nothing. Not to mention, True Martial University gave enough time to the experts to practice and level up for next entrance tests, and to be honest, the time period of 100 years was still not sufficient for most experts to prepare for the entrance test. 100 years ago, Chu Jinkai and other pro-disciples of that time had already experienced the opening of True Martial University for new applicants, but they did not go. After all, not everyone was an exceptional case like Yishiwen, who was barely 20 years old right now. In fact, they were far from being qualified. However, in accordance with the current level and potential of both Yishiwen and Hua Menghan, they should be more than qualified to participate in True Martial University recruitment campaign in the coming 100 years. True Martial University has disciples divided into several ranks such as janitor disciples, common disciples, outer disciples, inner disciples, core disciples, true disciples, pro-disciples, and so on. That is very similar to our system of rank division, Yishiwen said. Actually, it's the other way round. In reality, Yiyuan School and the other major sects of not just Great Yu State but entire Southeast region have copied the education system and administration system of True Martial University, Chief Ifan explained. True Martial University is the most powerful presence in the entire southern region. Just imagine, if a true disciple from our sect applies to enter this university, he can at most become a janitor disciple. Similarly, a disciple who is at half-step legendary will become a common disciple, and a legendary disciple will become an outer disciple. The threshold to become an inner disciple is even higher. Janitor disciples are also there in Yiyuan School. They are low-ranked Hotian experts who are basically employed as cleaners by elders and senior disciples. Common disciple is a new concept that is not used in Yiyuan School. Hierarchy janitor disciple Yishiwen was stunned by Chief Ifan's explanation. So basically, even legendary experts were not considered worthy enough to become anything more than the outer disciples in True Martial University. Also, true disciples were treated as janitor disciples over there. The monstrous strength and influence of True Martial University could be imagined simply from the fact that its outer disciples were enough to wreak havoc in the southeast region. It was really hard to imagine the level of core disciples, true disciples and pro-disciples of True Martial University. Yishiwen was shocked to learn that Chief Ifan and the other pro-disciples were not even eligible to become outer disciples in True Martial University. Of course, this is not absolute because in addition to strength and cultivation level, True Martial University pays more attention to talent and future potential, Chief Ifan said. Their assessment is divided into truth, half-legend, legend and also the sage realm. Only the most outstanding experts can earn fame there. If you talk about us pro-disciples, our cultivation levels are still too low, and if we stepped into legendary realm, like Chu Jinkai, our performances will be too mediocre in comparison to our competitors. Perhaps, we may even be demoted to the rank of janitor disciples from common disciples. To be continued. Chapter 270. Chapter 270 Book Demon. Our practice time is too short, so if we step into the legendary realm now, then we are basically going to end up being at the bottom in True Martial University, Chief Ifan said. Yishiwen nodded. Even having great talent was not enough to reach higher levels of the legendary realm so easily. Therefore, it is better to stay at half-step legendary realm, and if we are able to give an outstanding performance during the entrance assessment test, perhaps they may consider giving us the status of inner disciples or even core disciples, Chief Ifan said. Now, Yishiwen finally understood the reason why these pro-disciples weren't keen on stepping into the legendary realm. So, they had been planning for decades, just for this one opportunity. Brother Yi, deducing from your age and cultivation level, if you wait for 100 years and then appear in the entrance assessment test of True Martial University, in that case, none of the opponents of half-step legendary level will stand a chance against you. Chief Ifan tried to give a critical opinion because going by the cultivation speed shown by Yishiwen, he should be able to definitely surpass legendary realm in the coming 100 years. In fact, he should be able to easily reach higher levels of sage realm if his cultivation continued to grow at this speed. That being said, now that Chu Jinkai has stepped into the legendary realm, will he give up on entering True Martial University this time? Yi Shiwen asked, but he obviously did not think that Chu Jinkai should give up, especially after waiting 100 years for this opportunity. However, postponing was also an option for him now, since a legendary expert's lifespan was 1,000 years and waiting for yet another 100 years was not a big deal because Chu Jinkai's life as a legendary expert had only just begun. Yes, I wanted to be a moderator between you two to erase all misunderstandings. There is no need for an unnecessary blood feud between you two. I am going to True Martial University, along with second and third pro-disciples, so now, only you, Chu Jinkai and Hua Menghan will remain in Yi Yuan School as pro-disciples. I want all three of you to get along and protect Yi Yuan School, Qi Fifan said. Do not misunderstand Chu Jinkai's intentions. That guy has made quite a lot of sacrifices for our sect. I don't hold anything against him, to be honest. But his followers always try to provoke me and I cannot just stand idle and let them do whatever they want, Yi Shiwen said. Well, that is understandable since no one is allowed to embarrass or insult a pro-disciple, and those who dare to break this rule deserve to be punished. You should continue to punish those who provoke you. I don't think Chu Jinkai would say anything, Qi Fifan said. Qi Fifan was on Yi Zaiwen's side because he knew that Yi Shiwen wasn't the type of guy who would indiscriminately attack people for no reason. No one could play with the dignity of a pro-disciple. That was a strict law in Yi Yuan School and not even the elders could break it. Good, my job is done here. I will not stay for long, time to say goodbye. Qi Fifan said goodbye with a smile and left. After he left, Yi Mo appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. True Martial University, it seems like a place I will have to visit eventually, Yi Shiwen said. He knew that Qi Fifan's proposal of waiting for 100 years was quite critical in a way. In fact, if he really waited for so long before appearing in True Martial University's entrance assessment, he would actually have no opponents at all. However, according to Qi Fifan, Yi Shiwen must stay at Half-Step Legendary Realm for coming 100 years. The longer he would stay at Half-Step Legendary Realm, the greater would be the accumulation of energy and experience. However, he could not wait for so long because now he knew that there was hope of returning to the Earth. Nothing could stop him now as he wanted to go back home as soon as possible. Of course, 100 years was not a long period of time for him, but that was not the case for the people on the Earth. He could not wait that long because his family would be dead by then. So, he must quickly enhance his cultivation as soon as possible, enough to make it possible for him to go back to his parents before they die. However, Yi Yuan School could not help him in achieving his new goal because the strongest known experts in this school were at most at Legendary Realm, and even they couldn't perform interdimensional travel. In other words, he must reach higher realms, much above Legendary Realm, to achieve his newfound goal. And it seemed like True Martial University was a place that might help him in this regard. After he made up his mind, he did not say anything to anyone and directly went to the main library of Yi Yuan School to find out more about True Martial University, and also to gain some basic general knowledge for the betterment of his understanding of this world. He had no time to accumulate experience, and hence had to use such a method to forcefully mug up all sorts of information and dump them into his mind. At his current status, he could naturally access forbidden parts of the library with ease. The main library was located in a different world that was somewhat small but had enough space to contain piles of millions of books, arranged in various different categories. The guard of this small world was an old man with unfathomable cultivation. Yi Shiwen tried to sense his cultivation level but failed to do so. His guess was that this old man was possibly at a very profound stage of the legendary realm. An expert like him really deserved to be the guard of Yi Yuan School's main library. After all, this one library was home to books on numerous martial techniques, secret skills, etc. There were a lot of other secret stuff stored in this library, and Yi Yuan School could not afford to lose them at any cost. Greetings to Senior. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said in a respectful manner. Good, are you a new true disciple? I haven't seen you before. The old man looked at Yishiwen and said. He looked quite surprised as the young man standing in front of him was clearly at Truth's 7th stage, but he had never seen him coming to the library before. This was quite strange because new true disciples would usually visit the main library, right after stepping into Truth Realm, to learn basics about Truth Realm and a variety of other information. However, it was extremely rare for an expert of Truth's 7th stage to visit the main library for the first time. This was because Yishiwen had successive breakthroughs, one after another after he stepped into the Truth Realm. Not to mention, he was never stuck at any point during his cultivation and never really found a need to visit the main library. However, now he had to admit that knowledge was a necessary tool to obtain greater power. Yishiwen nodded. The old man looked somewhat strangely at him, then said, You can go inside, but you may have trouble locating things inside, so I will send a book demon to show you the way. The old man conveniently summoned a book demon. It was a glowing white spirit, about 30 centimeters tall, with a somewhat timid appearance. You will find all sorts of books in this stock. Go inside and take a look, that old man indifferently said. Thank you, Senior, for the help, Yishiwen said and entered the library with that book demon. Brother, what kind of books are you looking for? The book demon said. These book demons would daily absorb spiritual essence from the books in order to live. Even a stone could turn into a demon, let alone books. And these books often possessed inherent advantages because they were written by great people who usually left behind a portion of their souls in the books they wrote. These souls and lingering sentiments would later emerge as book demons. Of course, the type of book demon was dependent on the book's content. And some formidable rebellious ones had taken refuge in Yuan's school, for example, the one who was showing the way to Yishiwen. Yishiwen said, I'm looking for information on True Martial University. I see, those data books have also been read by several seniors in the past, the book demon said and led Yishiwen in the right direction. These book demons were not weak beings and also did not have low status in the sect. Their status was comparable to core disciples and they were also able to cultivate. Once a book demon succeeded to cultivate to a considerably higher level, it could then become a disciple of Yuan's school. Yishiwen suspected that even that old guard was probably a book demon. Perhaps, he used to be a book demon earlier but later began to cultivate, and eventually reached such a high level that he was given a very important post of guarding the main library. However, at this time, Yishiwen was not much interested in getting to the bottom of this matter. Bang! Suddenly, there came a loud noise along with distant human voices. Yishiwen turned his head in the direction of the source of the sound and saw a team of giant book demons, as if going on an expedition. The book demon noticed the curious expression on Yishiwen's face and said, This is being caused by a book on military and war strategies. Those book demons are born out of that book. Yishiwen couldn't help but feel amazed. This world was really full of wonders. They continued to walk past several bookshelves. There were countless huge books stacked on these shelves and contained a variety of information. It was not hard to tell that some of these books were thousands of years old. Hey Yishiwen, I know a better way than using soul search to grasp knowledge faster and more efficiently. Yumo's voice suddenly resounded in Yishiwen's mind, and at the same time, he appeared beside him. Yumo was clad in a Confucian-style scholar dress, and the instant he appeared, the book demon was frightened and jumped back away in panic. Yumo glanced at that book demon's face with a rather unexcited look in his eyes. You just need to catch them all and swallow them up. This is the easiest way to naturally grasp knowledge. To be continued. Chapter 271. Chapter 271 Overnight Epiphany. You just catch them all and swallow them up. This is the easiest way to naturally grasp knowledge. Yumo chuckled. He simply did not care the method, he just wanted for Yishiwen to get stronger as fast as possible. Even if Yishiwen was to skim through so many books, it was similar to scanning documents with a scanner and storing unprocessed data in his mind. This did not mean that he understood everything he read, But if he consumed these book demons, then he would immediately understand the essence of all the information, because these book demons themselves were nothing but the very embodiment of book's essence. This suggestion seemed very attractive to Yi Shiwen, but the same wasn't true for the little book demon standing next to him. To the terrified book demon, these two strangers seemed like ominous people with cruel motives. This was a world of books, and these book demons were basically the embodiment of school's martial art heritage. Yi Shiwen used Soul Search and instantly began to sweep through a book. Although for ordinary experts, there were going to be some disparities between merely reading a book and digesting the book's essence by digesting the book demon associated with that book, however, this wasn't an issue for Yi Shiwen. Of course, Ye Mo didn't know about Yi Zaiwen's secret, and that was why he made the suggestion of digesting the book demons instead of reading the books. Yi Zaiwen's soul search began to sweep through books and simultaneously began to gather a variety of information within his mind. At the same time, the mysterious space began to deconstruct the large inflow of information into bits of knowledge and transferred them to his mind for permanent storage. Yi Shiwen discovered that he did not need to consume a book demon to obtain its book's essence. With the help of Soul Search and Mysterious Space, he could quickly stock up knowledge, and that too in a considerably short amount of time. The stock of knowledge began to increase in his mind, and his cultivation level also began to increase, though very slowly. However, the influx of knowledge and information was constantly expanding his foundation. Yi Shiwen was pleasantly surprised to find out that his inner state was consolidating bit by bit, while at the same, his understanding of this world was also improving bit by bit. This was also beginning to positively affect his cultivation, as he could clearly feel faint traces of improvement. Yi Shiwen finally understood why the ancients said reading a book is like taking a walk on a 10,000 miles long road. He had to accept that he lacked enough experience about this world, and if by reading these books and gaining their essence, he could gather up experience and knowledge, then there was nothing that could stop him. Most of these books were ages old and contained the gist of insights and knowledge gathered by ancient experts through thorough research and hard work, but right now, Yi Shiwen was plundering their hard work so effortlessly. Yi Shiwen could see that the authors of these books must have also read books from the authors that came way before in time. In that way, these books were a continuation of ancient knowledge, passed down by many authors from different eras through their books. While he was absorbing the essence of the books, he felt as if he was actually experiencing the whole thing in real life. He could sense various sentiments and emotions surging within his heart. The more he went inside this world of books and absorbed their essence, the more he sensed a gradual change in his own temperament. He also noticed the presence of overgrown pride within himself, something he was unaware of all this time. He realized that his own breath, aura, was constantly changing, and there was now a recognizable presence of an emperor-level aura within his body. As he continued to gain knowledge, insights, and experience, he was basically gaining wisdom, and this was having a major effect on not just his personality or temperament, but also on his cultivation. The little book demon was staring at him with his eyes open wide like those of a dead fish. Being a book demon himself, he certainly understood what was going on. He could clearly see how Yi Shiwen was so effortlessly reading books using his soul search skill and absorbing those books' essence like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, his cultivation was also rising gradually as a result of that. In fact, even book demons did the exactly same thing. A book demon also needed to comprehend and then extract the essence of a book to enhance knowledge and cultivation, so it usually took a lot of time. Yi Shiwen was now simply like a humanoid book demon, but unlike other book demons, he was able to thoroughly understand the contents of countless books and absorb their essence, and that too to an extent of exaggeration when compared to other book demons and their slow comprehension speed. The little book demon was shocked. How could someone understand the essence of a book so easily, as if it was no more difficult than chopping vegetables? Most people did not succeed even after using Soul Search to obtain so much knowledge so fast. The little book demon was shocked by the scene unfolding in front of his eyes. It was basically impossible to digest such huge amounts of information so fast, and there were so many books in the library that a normal expert might have to take multiple rebirths in order to learn from all the books. But what Yi Shiwen was doing right now was simply unprecedented, and the result of that was right in front of the little demon's eyes as he could see Yi Zaiwen's aura changing constantly. This was bizarre and unscientific scene. Well, the little book demon would never know that this was all because of the mysterious space that was hidden in Yi Zaiwen's mind. It was like a million times more efficient computing machine than the best supercomputer made on the Earth. Hence, Yi Shiwen's comprehension speed was off the charts, and he was basically reading an entire row of books from a large bookshelf with just one sweep of soul search. Although he still had to go through a lot of books because there were countless bookshelves in this so-called small world of books, and his progress so far was insignificant. However, Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry, as he could feel his own cultivation level rising bit by bit. In fact, he could also feel the gaps in his previous knowledge being filled by the bits of information coming from these books. He felt like entering a profound world of knowledge where he could learn anything so long as he wanted to. Today, Yi Shiwen discovered that if the world of knowledge was like a sea, then his own possession of knowledge was nothing more than a drop so far. There was so much to learn that his blood was boiling with excitement in the anticipation of what might be the next new thing he was going to learn. Yi Shiwen knew that if he could comprehend all this knowledge, then he would certainly be able to advance to a realm of unfathomable proportions, though he would still need to accumulate huge amounts of energy to have breakthroughs in the process of reaching the realms above. However, this much knowledge and experience should be enough for a long period of time to help in upgrading his cultivation level. So long as he had sufficient stock of energy, he should be able to have multiple breakthroughs overnight. In other words, he was experiencing the famous overnight epiphany right now, since he was obtaining centuries' worth of knowledge so quickly. The little book demon was flying next to him, but did not dare to disturb his comprehension process. At this time, Yemo was also on his side and concocting Ling Dawn in order to keep Yi Zaiwen's comprehension uninterrupted at all times. He was also playing the part of Yi Zaiwen's bodyguard. The rise in Yi Zaiwen's cultivation was very fast, but this was useless without the support of massive amount of energy. Tianyuan Mirror was the only source of Ling Dawn, and Yi Shiwen had consumed a lot of Ling Dawn on the Demon Island. Since the consumption pace was high, so production pace must match or at least outmatch the consumption pace in order to have a sustainable comprehension process. The situation was compelling Yemo to maintain a constant production of Ling Dawn in order to avoid a lack of fuel for keeping the mysterious space running non-stop. Fortunately, however, Yemo had not been resting for the last more than half a year on the Demon Island. While Yi Shiwen was busy killing gods' descendants and absorbing divinity from their bodies, he also used their nadins, demon cores, for his cultivation enhancement. The flesh and blood of those demon beasts were all absorbed by Yemo to restore Tianyuan Mirror to the peak of truth 9th stage. Yes, Tianyuan Mirror was at a higher level than Yi Shiwen right now. This was the reason why Yemo's speed of concocting Ling Dawn had an unprecedented increase, enough to meet the consumption needs of Yi Shiwen. So this book is on the art of war and battle tactics. I never thought it to actually have so many hidden secrets. Yi Shiwen muttered while digesting the art of war and all sorts of tricks and tactics mentioned in the book. Now, even if he was suddenly asked to command a huge army of 1,000,000 soldiers, he would not find it troublesome. This was the benefit of having a full understanding of the art of war. Being a lone warrior who preferred being alone even during fights, this was a fairly unique concept. Yi Shiwen had to accept the fact that he had always been a brute who used sheer power over tactics to deal with his opponents. Now, he was slowly changing bit by bit as he continued to read the books on various topics. After reading several books on military and war strategy, he comprehended the combined essence he gathered from them and suddenly felt a sublimation occurring in his temperament. He had started to understand the mindset of soldiers and generals better and better. He also gained a better understanding of how to manipulate people, both friends and foes, to do his bidding. Yi Zaiwen's aura was changing dramatically and gaining the characteristics of the imposing aura of a commander. If his friends would see him right now after the transformation, they would say that he no longer looked like an uninterested and unsocial teenager who mostly focused on cultivation unless provoked. Now, He looked like an experienced commander who, if needed, could easily command soldiers at his fingertips. Of course, he was benefiting a lot by using this method, but his soul search was gathering too much information and the time for processing was less in comparison, since he needed to properly analyze the information and separate out the valuable knowledge. However, this was taking much more time since he had to process unnecessary and redundant information as well. It was said that truly invincible experts could achieve the so-called level of mastery where they could manipulate one world law to command 100 world laws at once, like the Demon Emperor who had never practiced sword martial techniques but was still able to display unsurpassed sword skills. In fact, the Demon Emperor's sword intention attack was far superior to that of the old man whom Yi Shiwen met in the ruins, located at the bottom of the East China Sea. Yi Shiwen certainly had not reached that level of mastery yet, but he was using the method of analogy to comprehend tough concepts and ideas. He was basically using practical examples to understand complex concepts. Yi Shiwen used the same method of comprehension by analogy to thoroughly comprehend the art of war. That was why he was able to easily understand the same military concepts when dealt in several other military books. Yi Shiwen was fascinated as his self-confidence was building up naturally. He continued to move forward little by little while gathering knowledge. There were some travel notes, miscellanies, personal letters and books that were covered in thick layer of dust. Apparently, no one had opened them in a long time. Yi Shiwen could not help but sigh with emotion as he could clearly see that the authors must have been true sages and legends to have compiled such hard-to-obtain knowledge in these long-forgotten books. However, even if most of this section of knowledge was valuable but not of immediate use to him. Of course, like others, he would also not waste valuable time and resources in obtaining this kind of knowledge, but he still read them and stored unprocessed data in the mysterious space for future use. To be continued, Chapter 272. Chapter 272 Devil Arts Power Technique. Yi Zaiwen's inner state was naturally not going to be same after the crazy absorption spree. Slowly, Yi Zaiwen's aura began to transform from that of a soldier to a general, then to a king, emperor, and moving closer to that of a sophist. This was a natural outcome since he was absorbing the knowledge of a lot of people, for example, unrivaled profound scholars, Zen Buddhists, Taoist experts, etc. All of them with distinct features and expertise in various fields, and since each of them had reached the heavenly level of understanding in their respective fields of expertise, Yi Shiwen had to benefit accordingly by gaining essences of miscellaneous knowledge. He was just like a gluttonous person who was using mysterious space to devour knowledge and gaining from that. He was slowly approaching the level of understanding of a sophist. He was very much enjoying this whole mass study session. He was slowly walking inside while reading all the books in his path. He would sometimes come across two very different perspectives to the same idea, then, he would sit cross-legged on the ground to ponder about the newly obtained contradicting ideas to find out the correct one. For example, life or death, which one is eternal? One must plan ahead for unforeseen problems, or one should not give in to groundless fears. Which one is correct? There were a lot of confusing and contradictory concepts in this world, and Yi Shiwen needed to choose which perspective he wanted to follow. Nt. Wei Yuchomo. Before it rains, bind around with silk. Idiom, from Book of Songs. To plan ahead, to prepare for a rainy day. Chirin Yotien. Man of Kai fears the sky falling. Idiom, groundless fears. Who is this insolent person that dares to peep at my kingdom? As soon as Yi Shiwen sent his soul's search into a royal Tao book, suddenly, a huge ghostly figure emerged from it. It looked like the ghost of a majestic emperor. Yi Shiwen could see traces of uprightness and elegance, however, its cold eyes were glaring at him. Yi Shiwen noticed from the author's name inscribed on the book that the author used to be a great emperor of some ancient dynasty that ruled Great Yu State in the past. So, the ghostly figure apparently belonged to that emperor. A mere book demon like you thinks of himself as the master of this book's world? I suggest you open your eyes and see that your book is in my hand. The source of your very existence is in my grasp. I guess that should be enough to tell who is the boss here. Yi Shiwen sneered and said. After surviving the baptism of the demon emperor's imposing aura, now the imposing aura of no other emperor could have any effect on Yi Shiwen. "How dare you!" the ghostly figure shouted and flew towards Yi Shiwen. It suddenly used royal fist technique to throw consecutive punches at him, summoning forth a tornado of enormous and powerful dragon chi. The emperor must have been at a profound realm when he was alive. No wonder his ghost was so powerful in the form of a small book demon. According to the history records, the Great Yu state had reached the peak of governance and dominance, and had also become a well-known country among the 10 countries of the southeast region when he was the emperor of this country. His theory of governance was so popular that it was recorded, based on his personal notes, as rules to be followed by the other rulers in the course of history. After a lapse of innumerable years, Yuan's school collected the notes, and stored it up in this library in the form of a book. This book demon's power was clearly above Truth 9th peak level, perhaps reaching complete Truth realm. NT, Truth 9th stage. "Well, aren't you an ungrateful one?" Yi Shiwen snorted as his hand transformed into a dragon claw and went forward to grasp the tornado. He directly caught the tornado and routed it like it was nothing. "How is this possible? Who are you?" The book demon couldn't believe what he just saw. His most powerful attack was easily caught and crushed by Yi Shiwen. He screamed like a scaredy cat and immediately tried to return to the book. A book demon was in the end just a book demon. He could never transform into a true emperor he used to be. Yi Shiwen thought of something, then caught the fleeing book demon and instantly annihilated it before it could hide inside his book. After destroying the book demon, Yi Shiwen moved towards the next book. He did not need to consume that book demon's body as he had already absorbed the book's essence with the help of mysterious space. Yi Shiwen tossed that book demon's leftover consciousness over to the little book demon who was showing him around. And suddenly, the little book demon's cultivation level rose from Truth 1st stage to Truth 5th stage after assimilating the essence of knowledge from that dead emperor's book demon. His timid appearance was abruptly replaced by the domineering appearance of an emperor as soon as he absorbed the majestic essence of the dead emperor's notebook. The little book demon was surprised, but he immediately recollected himself, then cupped his hands and respectfully said, "Thank you, brother." Yi Shiwen did not say anything in reply and continued to walk forward. Yi Shiwen seemed like just taking a walk but was simultaneously devouring entire bookshelf worth of books at a time. Days passed one by one, and in a blink of an eye, 3 months had passed already. Yi Shiwen stayed in the library for a full 3 months and nearly read half of the books. His reading capacity had extended to outstanding proportions. Even his cultivation level had also reached a higher level than before. On the way, Yi Shiwen also encountered several book demons that attacked him. He never took the initiative to attack any of them because his motive was just to obtain knowledge, possibly without getting involved in a meaningless slaughter. However, not all book demons understood his motive and considered him as an intruder. They had spent hundreds of thousands of years in those books and now considered this library as their home. Many of them were naive and did not know that there was actually another world outside this one. Thus, whenever Yi Shiwen used soul search on their books, they did not consider it polite and basically felt like being attacked. Hence, they also attacked him and were mercilessly butchered as a result of that. Thanks to this pattern, the little book demon benefited a lot by absorbing the essence of fallen book demons, and eventually reached the peak of Truth 9th stage. Now, most of the times when book demons tried to attack Yi Shiwen, he would willingly step in to deal with them so that there was no longer a need for Yi Shiwen to personally act. Yi Shiwen noticed that this world of books was predominantly run by the law of the jungle and driven by instincts of the book demons. He also noticed the little book demon was very grateful to him for indirectly helping him in leveling up. He would never get to know that Yi Shiwen did it on purpose. Yi Shiwen had gained exotic and ancient wisdom and knew the importance of having powerful pawns to be manipulated at will. However, the good thing was that Yi Shiwen was not corrupted by excessive wisdom and power, as he had consumed all sorts of knowledge, including both the advantages of evil ideas and importance of peaceful concepts of kindness and compassion. Hence, in the end, He was fairly balanced on the brim of equilibrium between good and bad, and could use knowledge from both sides to his advantage. As Yi Shiwen continued to proceed further into the depths of this small world, he discovered something that he never thought to find them in Yi Yuan's school's library. Yes, he found books on devil arts, several secret devil books on devil power techniques. There was a huge section of the library that was fully dedicated to devil books and had basically turned into a territory ruled by book devils. Jie Jie, a human has intruded into our territory, Jie Jie, he is really bold. Listen everyone, we are going to devour that human's flesh and blood. He looks strong, so our cultivation should have an incredible progress. Kill him! Yi Shiwen listened to what they said and felt as if he had really walked into the territory of devils. However, they were just the book demons derived from books on devil power techniques. Of course, they did not look like other book demons as they had taken the form of real-life devils. Hence, people called them book devils. They regarded themselves as true devils. Fortunately or unfortunately, these book devils took birth in the devil books and had stayed in this small world throughout their lives. So, their behavior was kind of understandable considering their inherent urge for violence, supremacy, and territorial dominance. Brother, you have done enough for me. Now, let me deal with them and contribute a little towards returning the favor. The little book demon said with respect. He had already started acting as a little brother to Yi Shiwen and looked up to him. Not to mention, his cultivation right now was higher than that of Yi Shiwen. The little book demon's battle efficiency had also reached a tyrannical level by absorbing the essences of several book demons. He dashed forward at a lightning speed and instantly barged into the formation of devil soldiers. Although there were a lot of devils in the devil army, most of them were weak and very few were formidable enough to sustain his attacks. The book devils did not stand a chance against him as he had not just leveled up in the last 3 months. By absorbing the essence of mighty warriors and legendary people, he himself had come to possess an extremely domineering and aggressive imposing aura. Not to mention, his fighting style was elegant and efficient, unlike those devils. Die devils! The little book demon shouted and released a flood of terrifying Jinyuan that wiped out most devil soldiers in one fell swoop, then absorbed their essences. Who dares to run wild in our territory? No one messes with devil race. At this time, a book devil of truth 9th peak suddenly appeared from nowhere and rushed towards the little book demon. He had a huge troll-like figure and seemed like a real devil. The two sides indulged in a violent battle and complementary waves swept out in all directions. Yi Shiwen immediately safeguarded the devil books he wanted to study and saved them from the aftermath of the battle. He sat down cross-legged and began to scan devil power techniques and analyze them in the mysterious space. Although devil race was infamous for terrorizing all of the 10,000 worlds, the power techniques developed by them were certainly one of the best. Yi Shiwen had been using devil wings and knew that there were a lot of other awesome devil power technique he should check out. An ordinary expert might have to consider whether to practice devil arts or not. After all, it had a very bad reputation in the world and there were chances of self-harm if not practiced properly. But Yi Shiwen did not need to face any of such issues. He had a favorable impression of devil power technique. In fact, devil wings repeatedly saved his life several times in the past. Yi Shiwen believed that as long as he could make good use of a technique, the source of its origin did not matter. Not to mention, he could always get rid of the bad and retain the good elements of any technique with the help of mysterious space. To be continued. Chapter 273. Chapter 273. Fighting had entered a superheated phase. The fiendish book devil did not a chance again the little book demon, and was on a continuous retreat spree. Though the book devil was very strong, but his opponent was a lot stronger. With the help of Yi Shiwen, the little book demon swallowed several formidable book demons, and many of whom were superior to this fiendish book devil. Bang! The book devil could not block a full-fledged attack of truth 9th peak level, and was sent flying by a massive explosion. After that, he was killed and then swallowed by the little book demon. Yishuan glanced at the victorious book demon and also saw an evil look floating in his eyes. At this time, Yishuan was busy scanning devil power techniques and choosing best ones to digest and absorb in his sea of knowledge. Traces of mochi could be seen emerging out of his body and proliferating into the air, but was soon annihilated as mochi could not affect his conscience. NT, mochi equals Devilki, Yi Zaiwen's mind or conscience was like an absolute existence and couldn't be tweaked with so easily. Yi Shiwen was successful in completely absorbing devil power techniques to the extent of taking a leap from quantitative change to a qualitative change. Yes, it was time for a breakthrough. If his inner state was like a water tank, then the energy contained in his body was like water. However, now this water tank was not big enough to accommodate the ever-increasing energy content. If his inner state was like a water tank, then the stock of energy was almost the size of a pool. This comparison was enough to give a valid reason why there was a need for a breakthrough, to increase the size of the water tank in order to accommodate excess energy. Yi Zaiwen's inner state itself was much stronger than others on the same cultivation level, not to mention after the recent studying spree in the last few months, he managed to stretch the water tank to the size of a pool. And this was enough to accommodate all of the water, energy, he had accumulated since the last breakthrough. His cultivation had already reached a perfect situation that was required before each breakthrough. Now he had no choice but to have a breakthrough, otherwise, continuing further wouldn't have any great effect. However, his cultivation and accumulation were extremely profound, to an extent that once he had a breakthrough, his battle efficiency and energy content would reach complete truth level. In that case, no one in the truth realm would be his opponent. The next step was half-step legendary realm. Easy to say, but only a few were able to take this so-called half-step into the legendary realm. However, Yi Zaiwen's accumulation had increased up to a terrifying level, and after the breakthrough, even an expert of half-step legendary realm wouldn't be able to kill him. Yi Shiwen would still have a chance of escape. Although still insufficient, he wanted to step into half-step legendary realm because only after that, he might have a chance to participate in the so-called assessment. If so many people were choosing to stay at half-step legendary realm, there definitely was a reason behind this kind of strategy, and he also wanted to test it out. However, food should be eaten only a mouthful at a time, and Yi Shiwen knew this fact quite well. Now that the decision was made, he was ready to have a breakthrough in the library while Yemo and the little book demon were going to be his bodyguards. Though right now, these two bodyguards were somewhat tensed as this was the world of books, infested with book demons. Although not all books had given birth to book demons, there were still enough to pose a threat to him, and especially the book devils. Of course, most book demons preferred to stay in their books, but a breakthrough was going to cause turbulence in this world and might attract the attention of unwanted guests. A great danger was associated with having a breakthrough here, but Yi Shiwen had already made his decision, and no one could change his mind now. Yemo immediately commanded Tianyuan Mirror and sent it hovering over Yi Zaiwen's head. It released a scarlet curtain that enveloped Yi Shiwen completely from all sides. The little book demon was not far from there, and seemed all prepared to perform his bodyguard duty. He held a great sense of gratitude towards Yi Shiwen, and considered him like a big brother. He witnessed Yi Zaiwen's mercy and compassion firsthand and managed to leave the lowest position of truth first stage, and reach quite a high position of truth ninth stage in the world of book demons. Now, he had enough qualification to send an application to Yuan's school and get out of this world, thereby becoming a true disciple in Yuan's school. All thanks to Yi Shiwen, and he did not know what he must do to return the favor. Yi Shiwen changed his destiny, and he was willing to do anything for this big brotherly figure, even by putting his life on the line. Yi Shiwen sat down cross-legged and took out 2 half-step legendary zombie cores. Suddenly, a majestic deadki spew out into the air, and it seemed like the devil territory instantly evolved into the kingdom of death. Yi Shiwen wasn't surprised, as these 2 cores of half-step legendary zombies were bound to be terrifying, so this kind of outcome was understandable. Rippling deadki proliferated into the air, but the scarlet curtain blocked its path and contained it firmly around Yi Shiwen. At the same time, swirling Xingyan came out of his body and began to absorb the essence of the two cores. The raw energy first passed through Tianyuan mirror and entered phases of filtration and purification. Only after that, the purest form of energy was absorbed by Yi Shiwen. Although a major section of impure energy was stripped out, the remaining energy was pure and more than enough for having a breakthrough. Large fluctuation of energy around his body eventually began to attract the attention of several old book demons. Damn, this man is tyrannical. He completely obliterated the kingdom of book devils. But he is just an expert of Truth Realm. How can he be so tyrannical? I cannot believe my eyes. Ga, I sense Deadki. I am so happy. This is really a lucky day for Shimo. At this time, there was a sudden burst of Deadki on top of a bookshelf. NT, Shimo equals corpse devil. He is referring to himself as Shimo. A set of greedy eyes looked at the two zombie cores held in the hands of Yi Shiwen, who was deeply engrossed in meditating under the protection of Tianyuan mirror. One must know that the owner of these greedy eyes was none other than a book devil that had come out of a secret book on Deadki-based devil technique. However, there was no Deadki available in the library, and so there was no way for Shimo to practice this secret devil technique. But when he saw two Deadki-rich cores in Yi Zaiwen's hands, he could not hide a sudden burst of happiness in his heart. He was just one step away from stepping into half-step legendary realm, and these cores could make his wish come true. He was actually one of the top-ranked book demons in the entire library. Jia, those dead cores is mine! Shimo gave out a loud and sharp cry, and a large hand that was purely made up of dead went towards Yi Shiwen. NT, Jia, strange laughter, peculiar to devils. One Piece style, laughing face. Stop! At this time, the little book demon suddenly saw that Shimo was planning to attack Yi Shiwen. The little book demon immediately used Royal Fist technique and released a powerful attack that was so potent that it was almost on verge of reaching the complete Truth Realm. This was a very terrifying martial art, and as soon as it was invoked, the atmosphere suddenly changed, and it seemed as if the entire world must obey his order. Yemo was also getting slightly anxious at this moment because he himself had never witnessed a devil using Deadki-based attack. Humph, you alone cannot stop me, kid. I can eat you whole and on go, you understand that? Shimo got furious and shouted, while at the same time, he changed the direction of his own attack towards the little book demon. Shimo was at complete Truth Realm, whereas the little book demon was almost about to enter the same. But there was still enough gap between their strengths, not to mention Shimo could be considered one of the strongest experts on the same level. Boom! The little demon's Royal Fist attack was compromised, and the complementary waves of aftermath crashed against Tianyuan Mirror's protection barrier. Afterward, Shimo's Deadki attack further went towards the little book demon to finish him off. Bang! The little book demon stepped back while also trying to use his arms to block the attack but failed in doing so. Along with his blood spattering out, there appeared a huge wound on his arm, to an extent that it was almost close to being torn off his body, which was very frightening. If he had been slow even for an instant, then he would inevitably have lost an arm today. Gee! A cruel smile appeared on Shimo's face as he licked his lips and said, Jia, you look tasty, so this old man has decided to eat you, but first I will swallow the dead cores and step into half-step legendary realm. Then I will do you the favor of being my food. As long as I am alive, you'll never succeed. The little book demon said in a firm voice, and also noticed that the last attack exactly the same as the one used by his previous devil opponent, though this one was a bit more potent in comparison. The little book demon decided to use a devil technique against Shimo. So, he released Mochi from his body that suddenly transformed into the shadow of Devil Emperor with long horns and steady build. Ha! You think using a childish technique such as this will have any effect on me? I will bring an end to your wishful thinking, kid. Behold the power of my eternal Deadki arts. Shimo laughed strangely, then instantly fired a punch, releasing a stream of Deadki into the air. The surging Deadki was so horrifying that it seemed as if it was defying the very concept of 6 reincarnations and literally reversing the concept altogether. Boom! The two attacks collided and Shimo's attack expectedly had an upper hand yet again. Shimo's skill was much more than that of the little book demon, and this outcome was understandable. Jie, it's time to get my cores. Shimo was about to attack Tianyuan Mirror's protective screen, when suddenly, a spear came out of nowhere and stabbed him right in the chest, nailing him into the ground. Shimo turned to look what happened just now, and realized that the spear had been thrown by the little book demon. He immediately got furious and shouted, "If you are really so eager to die, I'll gladly fulfill your wish. I changed my mind about first seizing the cores because now I am gonna devour you first." Shimo condensed a big devil claw that was made up of a mixture of Deadki and Inchi. And the very next instant, the devil claw went towards the little book demon at an incredibly fast speed as if to rip him apart. However, at this time, he heard a loud shout. "Stop!" A tyrannical aura engulfed the entire area all of a sudden. Then a huge dragon claw appeared out of nowhere and advanced towards the devil claw. Boom! The devil claw was instantly grabbed and then crushed by the dragon claw, resulting in a massive explosion. To be continued. Yes, this chapter is without a title, tongue sticking out. Why don't you guys come up with something? Chapter 274. Chapter 274, Overturning the Heaven Seal. Boom! The devil claw was instantly annihilated by Yi Zaiwen's attack. "You are courageous, I give you that." Yi Shiwen sneered, then stood up after having completely absorbed the zombie cores. He had already broken into Truth 8th stage, and this breakthrough was a lot easier than the previous one. If Thaner State was a water tank and energy was water, then he had already been successful in the expansion of water tank, and in having done so, the difficulty could be imagined. But now he had already built a good pool of energy to keep the irrigation line active. He had enough energy to have this breakthrough, and even after that, he still had a lot of spare energy. After stepping into Truth 8th stage, his battle strength had already reached complete Truth realm because his accumulation was way too much. In fact, reaching such a state was impossible for anyone else. Others cannot accumulate the way Yi Shiwen does because their bodies will explode with excess accumulation of energy. That is why other experts require frequent breakthroughs. Yi Shiwen has a tyrant body to sustain and contain much higher levels of energy within his body. What is going on here? Shimo was confused and obviously did not know what just happened. Damn, how did you absorb my cores so fast? How dare you, human! Now brace yourself because I am going to eat you to make up for my loss. Shimo's anger level was off the charts. After all, a golden opportunity of stepping into half-step legendary realm was destroyed by Yi Shiwen right in front of his eyes. Shimo's whole body was instantly covered in Deadki fire, also releasing a putrid smell in the air, and suddenly, several bone claws approached Yi Shiwen to tear him to pieces. This Deadki fire was very insidious, and could melt shields and barriers like butter with the mere touch. Die, 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 die! Shimo entered a wild rage mode and immediately attacked Yi Shiwen. Your inconsequential technique is not even worth witnessing. Yi Shiwen sneered and stretched out his big hands. His golden body made a sudden appearance, and his golden hands went forward to grasp the incoming attack. Yi Shiwen appeared just like a reincarnated overlord as he directly caught the Deadki fire attack. ZZZZ! The Deadki fire was still trying its best to corrode Yi Zaiwen's palms but did not succeed in doing so, and suddenly got extinguished like it was nothing. There was an incredible look of disbelief on the little book demon's face because Shimo was a well-known powerhouse in the library, though not among the top ones, but powerful enough to scare most book demons. However, that Shimo's most terrible attack wasn't able to put even a scratch on Yi Zaiwen's skin. The little book demon's mind was blown by this scene because he just couldn't imagine the extent of his elder brother's strength. What? This is impossible. Shimo looked incredibly at Yi Shiwen. I cannot believe my eyes. My zombie art technique should be invincible. Invincible, you say? Don't even try to be so full of yourself, especially in front of me. Yi Shiwen sneered as he had actually killed 2 half-step legendary zombies earlier, and as Shimo was nothing like those genuine zombies. Shimo was just a book demon, belonging to a book on corpse devil practice techniques. I'd like to see what kind of secret lies in your zombie arts. Yi Shiwen also had a keen interest in zombie arts. If a person dies and his soul leaves the body, then what exactly brought the corpse back to life as a zombie? In this world, zombies were considered undead, somewhere between alive and dead. Rippling Mountain Seal. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and a huge printed ribbon with a seal on it, enormous and powerful, instantly appeared from the void and smashed down like a falling meteor. This was a very horrible scene, as if the earth would turn inside out. Not to mention, this attack was locked on Shimo, and there was no place to hide. This was the stunning heritage that Yi Shiwen obtained from the Tomb Slave. The name of this inheritance was called Overturning the Heaven's Seal. In his previous life, he had heard about extremely destructive magical weapons, and this was a similarly stunning attack arcane, derived directly from the source of an extinct secret sect. Yi Shiwen got this ancient arcane attack technique as a reward, and its destructive power was unparalleled. This secret arcane technique was divided into 3 stages: Rippling Mountain Seal, Inverting the Ocean Seal, and Overturning the Heaven's Seal. Yi Shiwen had already mastered all 3 stages, but at his current skill level, he could only use Rippling Mountain Seal. However, its destructive power was ridiculously large, enough to smash down an expert of Complete Truth Realm. Although Yi Shiwen's skill was far better than his, the power of Rippling Mountain Seal was needless to say. Shimo's thinking process was a little slow, but he finally reacted. He ultimately realized that Yi Shiwen was an absolute existence, and that he himself did not stand a chance against Yi Shiwen. At least that was the case at present. Even his most powerful attack couldn't break Yi Shiwen's defense. Do not kill me, please do not kill me. I can explain to you the most exquisite zombie theory, allowing you progress by leaps and bounds in Dead Key arts. Shimo quickly shouted in a panic state. I do not need it. Yi Shiwen already had mysterious space, so he was not interested in this offer. Boom! There sounded a terrifying fulmination noise, and Shimo was smashed into a group of essence, grasped in Yi Shiwen's big hand. Yi Shiwen glanced at the little book demon and threw the group of essence towards him. The little book demon's body immediately absorbed the group of essence and began to digest it rapidly. After a long time, the imposing aura of the little book demon suddenly stagnated for a moment, followed by his aura exploding the very next instant, sending him directly into the Complete Truth Realm. He was at the peak of Truth 9th stage, narrowly failing to step into the Complete Truth Realm, but Yi Shiwen helped him once again in this vital breakthrough. Swallowing other book demons or book devils was the most efficient method for book demons to enhance cultivation. I don't know how to show my gratitude to you, brother, for showing such graciousness towards me. The little book demon cupped his hands across the chest and sincerely said. If Yi Shiwen was not there to help him, he would have continued to stay at the bottom in the hierarchy of book demons. Would you like me to take you out of this place? Yi Shiwen stared intently at the little book demon and asked. Of course, I would absolutely love that. I have been willing to get out of here for such a long time. The little book demon quickly answered, as he was aware of living in this small library world all this time, and he was also aware of existence of a large world outside this small space. He wanted to see the world where Yuan School existed, and the tyrannical guard wouldn't allow any of the book demons to go outside. Yuan School was afraid of evil book demon causing havoc in their world, so these book demons weren't allowed to come out of the library world. In order to go out, they must take refuge in Yuan School and contribute significantly by giving their distinguished service. The book demons were expected to get real strong in order to get an opportunity of going out to perform tasks for Yuan School as deacons. Only then, they would have a strong chance of becoming a full-fledged Yuan School's disciple, which was again a rare opportunity. However, such a rare case was in minority, and sometimes wouldn't happen for hundreds of years. For him, This was a luxury that even after having taken birth few decades back, with Yi Zaiwen's help, he could enjoy becoming one of such rare cases and might have a chance to go out of this world. Reaching complete truth realm was literally a dream come true for him, and all thanks to Yi Shiwen. The gratitude he felt towards Yi Shiwen was naturally difficult to put into words. Good, I have established a faction in the outer world, it's called Qianyu Faction. But I must leave Yiyuan School to join True Martial University, so I am going to find a way to make you a true disciple. You will assume the position of the leader of Qianyu Faction in my absence, what do you say? This was his plan all along. In his absence, Qianyu Faction, being a truth-level faction, was going to need a strong leader, as there already were several true disciples in this faction, and none of them were strong enough to be the leader. One true disciple was enough in an ordinary faction, but Qianyu Faction was the faction of a pro-disciple and must be led by a competent leader. Yi Zaiwen's plan was to cultivate this little book demon and make him competent enough to assume role of Qianyu Faction's leader, then he would feel relieved while going to True Martial University. Now an expert of complete truth realm was going to safeguard Qianyu Faction, plus Yi Shiwen had already reconciled with Chu Jinkai, the strongest disciple in the entire sect. With all these preparations, Yi Shiwen was reassured that Qianyu Faction, his family, and friends would stay safe in his absence. Of course, Yi Shiwen didn't miss to witness the little book demon's loyalty towards him when he was willing to risk his own to protect Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had already seen through the little book demon's honest attitude, otherwise he wouldn't have put so much effort in nurturing him. I am very much willing, I surely would. The little book demon nodded and couldn't hide his excitement. He was not just going to become a true disciple, he would also become the leader of a faction. This was really a dream come true. Do you have a name? Yi Shiwen asked. No. The little book demon said in a somewhat embarrassed way. Such being the case, I'll give you a name. From now on, your name shall be Yi Shu, Yi Book. Also from now on, you are a member of Yi Clan. To be continued. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.